The wind gauge shattered against the rocks, sending fragments of plastic and glass across the dusty observation post. Lieutenant Maya Trần didn't flinch. 3,000 yards away through the shimmering heat of the Al-Badia plateau, 3 enemy generals paced behind darkened windows that would open for exactly 9 seconds. Commander Blake Rourke's voice cut through the static. "No one can make that shot. Not through thermal shear at 2 miles, not with a 7-second window, and definitely not 3 times in a row." Maya chambered around, her breathing steady as mountain stone. "You don't need no one, Commander. You need me." What happened next would rewrite the physics of long-range engagement and expose a betrayal that went deeper than anyone imagined. I'm about to tell you how one woman's impossible shots saved a mission, exposed a traitor, and changed modern warfare doctrine forever. Drop a comment with your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me take you to that ridge where math, wind, and willpower collided. The mylar strip danced in Maya's fingers like a serpent's tongue, each microscopic flutter translating to numbers in her mind. Chief Petty Officer Dax Hollister watched from his spotting scope, barely concealing his skepticism as the Army sniper attached to their Joint Special Operations Command unit performed what looked like witchcraft with a piece of emergency blanket. "Wind meters right there," Hollister muttered, nodding toward the digital anemometer mounted on their hide's sandbag wall. The device read 5.2 knots, steady from the northwest. Maya didn't look up from her calculations. "Your meter reads surface wind at our position. I need to know what's happening at 700, 1,400, and 2,100 meters along the bullet path." She let the mylar strip catch another micro-gust, watching how it torqued rather than simply bent.
Thermal columns rising off that wadi are creating a wind shear at the midpoint. Your fancy meter doesn't know that. The early morning sun painted the Al-Badia high plateau in shades of amber and shadow. They'd been in position for 37 hours, watching the compound below, where intelligence suggested a clandestine meeting would occur. 3 generals from opposing factions supposedly at war with each other, gathering under one roof. The kind of meeting that rewrote regional power structures. Commander Blake Rourke approached their position moving with the fluid grace that 20 years of special operations had branded into his muscle memory. His call sign, Reaver, fit him perfectly. He had a reputation for cutting through enemy operations like a scythe through wheat. But this morning, his weathered face showed tension that had nothing to do with enemy contact.
"Confirm your sectors of fire are observation only," he said, though his eyes lingered on the match-grade ammunition Maya had laid out with obsessive precision. Each round was marked with tiny notations: temperature coefficients, barrel harmonics, corrections, spin drift calculations that looked like they belonged in a physics textbook rather than a sniper's kit. "Observation only, Commander," Maya replied, but her hands continued their prep work, cleaning already spotless glass on her scope, checking and rechecking the bubble level mounted to her rail. "Although if the situation changes, it won't." Rourke's tone carried command authority. "This is strictly reconnaissance. We identify the players, document the meeting, and exfiltrate. State Department wants to know who's really pulling strings out here, not start an international incident." Through her scope, Maya studied the compound's layout for the 100th time. 3 stories of reinforced concrete and blast barriers built into the side of a natural cliff formation that provided cover from aerial observation. The only vulnerable points were the window's narrow vertical slits that would make castle arrow loops look generous by comparison. "Thermal shimmers picking up," Hollister reported, adjusting his scope's focus. "Getting heat distortion from the valley floor." Maya pulled out a small notebook, its pages filled with atmospheric calculations that looked like they'd been lifted from a ballistics computer's source code. She made quick annotations factoring in the temperature gradient between the cold morning air and the rapidly heating rocks below. The math was beautiful in its complexity, a three-dimensional puzzle where every variable affected every other variable in cascading chains of causality. "Movement in the compound," Hollister announced. "3 vehicles approaching from the southeast. Looks like our guests are arriving." Through her scope, Maya watched the convoy approach. 3 identical SUVs with tinted windows moving in tactical formation with security vehicles leading and trailing. Professional. Disciplined. The kind of movement pattern that suggested military training rather than militia cobbled together from local fighters. The vehicles disappeared into the compound's underground garage, and for several minutes nothing moved except the heat shimmer rising from the rocks. Then, like synchronized dancers, curtains began moving in 3 different windows. Not opening, just shifting slightly as if someone was peering out from behind them. 3 distinct thermal signatures, Maya whispered, reading the subtle heat patterns through her scope. Different heights, different postures. Target 1 is pacing nervous energy. Target 2 is stationary, probably seated. Target 3 is... interesting. He's standing at an angle favoring his left side. Old injury, maybe. "You can't possibly see that level of detail through thermal distortion at this range," Hollister challenged. Maya shifted her position minutely, finding a gap between thermal columns. "The heat distortion isn't uniform. It creates lenses pockets where the image clarifies for fractions of seconds. You just need to know when to look." The sun climbed higher, and with it came complications. A cross-border quick reaction force convoy appeared on the horizon, taking position just outside the compound's perimeter. 6 vehicles, roughly 40 fighters. Not entering the compound, but clearly connected to the meeting. An insurance policy for the generals inside. Extraction clock just started ticking. Rourke observed his tactical mind already calculating timelines. "If this goes sideways, that QRF can cut off our primary exfil route in 12 minutes. Admiral Ellen Sloan's voice crackled through their encrypted comms, her tone carrying the weight of strategic command from her position at the Joint Operations Center. "Reaver, this is Overwatch. Maintain observation only. We have diplomatic assets standing by to..." The transmission cut to static. Then nothing. "Comms are down," the team's radio operator reported. "Satellite feed just dropped. We're dark for at least 90 seconds until the backup bird comes online." In that moment, the curtains in all 3 windows began to close. Not gradually, but with deliberate purpose. Someone down there knew they were being watched. Someone had timed this perfectly to coincide with the communications blackout. "They're going dark," Hollister reported unnecessarily. Everyone could see the heavy blackout curtains sliding across the windows. In seconds, their visual intelligence would be worthless. Maya's mind processed the scenario in milliseconds. 3 targets, 9 seconds of exposure as the curtains closed. 2,400 meters effective range through severe atmospheric interference. The math was impossible. The shots were impossible. But Maya had built her entire career on making impossible shots routine. "Commander," she said quietly, her voice carrying absolute certainty. "I need permission to engage." "Negative. You heard the Admiral. Observation only." "Sir, someone down there knows we're here. They timed this blackout. If these generals disappear now, we lose them forever. The intelligence dies here." Rourke was silent for 3 heartbeats. Through her peripheral vision, Maya could see him weighing options, calculating political fallout against tactical opportunity. "No one can make that shot," he said finally. 3 targets through closing windows at extreme range with thermal interference. It's physically impossible. Maya adjusted her position one final time, finding her natural point of aim. Her breathing slowed to match her heartbeat. The world narrowed to the scope's field of view, where physics became poetry, and impossibility became probability. You don't need no one commander. You need me. The first window was already half closed. Through the dancing heat shimmer, Maya could see the shadow of Target 1, the nervous pacer. She calculated wind drift, spin drift, Coriolis effect, vertical drop over distance. The numbers aligned in her mind like tumblers in a lock. "If you're wrong," Rourke began. "I'm not wrong." Maya's finger found the trigger, applying precisely 2.3 pounds of the 2.5-pound pull weight. "I never am about the wind." Hollister made a final adjustment to his spotting scope. "Range confirmed at 2,378 meters. Wait." He pulled back from his scope, rechecked his range card, then looked again. "That's not right. My card says 2415. Without looking away from her target, Maya spoke with casual precision. "Your card's off by 37 meters. The compound's foundation is built on a natural depression that your laser didn't account for. Trust the adjustment." It was a small moment, but it shifted something in Hollister's perception. This wasn't Army versus Navy rivalry anymore. This was expertise speaking to skepticism, and expertise was winning. "Commander," Maya said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "I can take all three before the curtains close, but I need authorization now." The windows continued their relentless slide toward closure. 7 seconds remaining. 6, 5. Rourke made his decision. "You are authorized to engage if and only if you can guarantee all three targets before those curtains close. One miss, and we're blown." Maya had already begun her breathing cycle. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. Her body became perfectly still, a biomechanical shooting platform more stable than manufactured steel. Through her scope, she found the sweet spot between thermal columns, that fraction of a second where the image crystallized into perfect clarity. The first shot broke the morning silence like controlled thunder. The bullet took 3.7 seconds to travel the distance, fighting through layers of air density that wanted to push it off course. Maya had already worked the bolt, chambering the second round before the first even reached its target. Through her scope, she watched Target 1's shadow jerk and crumple a perfect headshot through a window that was now 3/4 closed. "Hit!" Hollister confirmed, his voice carrying newfound respect. "Target 1 down." But Maya was already lining up shot 2. This one was harder. Target 2 had heard the glass break and was moving, not running, but shifting position in confusion. The window was nearly closed, maybe 3 seconds of visibility remaining. Worse, a sudden gust of wind had kicked up from the valley, adding 12 miles per hour of crosswind that hadn't existed 10 seconds ago. She adjusted on instinct, feeling the wind's personality through the mylar strip she'd wedged against her rifle stock. The second shot rang out, and this time Maya heard Hollister's sharp intake of breath. The bullet's path took it directly toward the balcony railing, a trajectory that looked like a clear miss. But Maya had calculated the ricochet angle. The bullet struck the metal railing at precisely 62 degrees, deflecting inward with enough residual energy to punch through the narrow window gap and find Target 2 center mass. The shadow dropped like a marionette with severed strings. "Holy... that's not possible," Hollister breathed. "You banked the shot. You actually calculated a ricochet at that range." 2 down. 1 to go. But Target 3, the one favoring his left side, had processed the situation with military efficiency. He was moving now, not in panic, but with purpose, heading for cover. The window was just a vertical slash, maybe 18 inches of visibility remaining. Maya's scope tracked minute movement patterns. The target's injury made his gait predictable, a slight hitch every third step that would put him in a specific position at a specific moment. She led the target aiming not where he was, but where physics demanded he would be. The third shot was poetry in motion. The bullet left the barrel just as Target 3's movement pattern brought him into the path of trajectory. He actually stepped into the shot, his own momentum adding to the kinetic impact. Through the scope, Maya watched the shadow spin and fall, the window curtains closing completely just as the body hit the floor. 3 for 3, Hollister said, his voice carrying something between awe and disbelief. 2,300 meters through thermal interference and closing windows. That's not marksmanship. That's magic. It's math, Maya corrected, already breaking down her rifle for rapid movement. Magic is just physics we don't understand yet. But even as she packed her equipment with practiced efficiency, the base communications net crackled back to life with urgent traffic. Admiral Sloane's voice carried a tension that made everyone freeze. Reaver, abort exfiltration route Alpha immediately. We have a traitor alert. Your primary route is burned. Someone leaked your position to hostile forces. Rourke's expression hardened into granite. Say again, Overwatch. You've been compromised. The blackout wasn't random. Someone on our side signaled those curtains to close. They knew exactly when our comms would drop. You're walking into an ambush. Through the spotting scope, Hollister could see the QRF convoy beginning to move not toward the compound, but along an intercept course with their planned extraction route. 40 fighters with vehicle-mounted weapons positioning to cut them off from their only way out. How many know our extraction plan? Maya asked, her mind already shifting from sniper to tactician. Everyone in the operations center, Rourke replied grimly. Plus the helicopter crews, the quick reaction force, and anyone with access to our operational orders. Could be 50 people. The implications hung in the air like the smell of cordite from Maya's shots. Someone in their own command structure had sold them out. Someone with enough access to know not just their position, but their exact timeline, their communications windows, their extraction routes. Movement at the compound, Hollister reported. They're scrambling a response force. Looks like your shots stirred up the Hornets. Enemy fighters poured out of the compound's underground garage, spreading out in search patterns. Some headed up the mountain toward their position. Others moved to establish blocking positions along probable escape routes. Professional. Coordinated. Far too coordinated for a hasty response to unexpected sniper fire. They knew, Maya said quietly. Look at their search pattern. They're not looking for where the shots came from. They already know. They're moving to pre-planned positions. She was right. The enemy's movement was too precise, too organized. This wasn't a reaction, it was an execution of a plan that had been in place before the first shot was fired. Exfil Route Bravo is our only option, Rourke decided. Through the canyon system to the north. It'll add 6 hours to our extraction, but a flare burst to life in the northern canyon, burning phosphorus bright in the morning sun. Then another, and another. A chain of flares marking their secondary route, like runway lights. Bravo's compromised too, Hollister said unnecessarily. The evidence burned bright before them. Whoever the traitor was, they hadn't just leaked one route. They'd leaked everything. Maya pulled out her range card, but instead of looking at distances, she studied angles and elevations. Her mind processed the terrain like a three-dimensional chessboard, calculating fields of fire dead zones and movement corridors. There, she said, pointing to a narrow ravine that cut diagonally across the plateau. That's not on any of our maps. I noticed it during our insert natural erosion channel hidden by an optical illusion from aerial observation. Rourke studied the terrain through his binoculars. That leads straight into hostile territory. No, Maya corrected. It leads into uncertain territory. Right now, hostile forces are concentrating on our known routes. They're not watching paths we don't know about. It was a crazy idea, escaping through a route that didn't exist on any tactical map, through terrain they hadn't studied, into an area where they had no support and no backup. But it was also the last thing the enemy would expect. We move in pairs, Rourke decided. Maya and Hollister, you're together. Your rifle is our insurance policy if this goes wrong. As they prepared to move, Hollister found himself reassessing the army sniper he'd dismissed as an outsider just hours ago. That ricochet shot, he said quietly. How did you know the angle would work? Maya allowed herself a small smile. Same way I knew your range card was off. I pay attention to details others miss. It's not about being better. It's about seeing what's already there. They moved out in tactical formation, leaving their established position for the uncertainty of the ravine. Behind them, enemy forces converged on positions that were already empty, hunting for ghosts that had vanished into terrain that didn't officially exist. But even as they escaped the initial trap, a cold certainty settled in Maya's mind. The traitor, whoever they were, had known too much. Not just routes and timelines, but operational patterns, communication protocols, even the personality dynamics of the team. This wasn't just someone with access to classified information. This was someone who understood them, who had possibly worked with them, who knew how they thought and moved and fought. The ravine was narrow and steep, forcing them to move in single file. Maya took point with her rifle, scanning for threats while mentally calculating fields of fire in the confined space. The rock walls rose 40 feet on either side, carved by centuries of seasonal floods into smooth, undulating surfaces that looked almost organic. Echo 3, this is Overwatch. Admiral Sloane's voice crackled through their tactical radios. Be advised, hostile drones are airborne. They're running thermal sweeps along all known routes. Copy Overwatch. We're Oscar Mike, through alternate terrain. A pause, then. Say again your position, Echo 3. You're not showing on any of our maps. That's intentional, ma'am. They pressed deeper into the ravine, the morning sun creating a patchwork of light and shadow that would confuse aerial observation. But it also meant they were moving blind, with no idea what lay ahead, or whether the ravine even had an exit. 20 minutes into their movement, Hollister held up a closed fist, the signal to halt. He pointed to a section of disturbed earth ahead. Fresh. Too fresh. Tripwire, Maya whispered, spotting the nearly invisible filament stretched across their path at ankle height. But it wasn't connected to an explosive. Instead, it led to a flare, another marker to signal their position. They anticipated even this, Hollister muttered. How this route isn't on any map. Maya studied the tripwire's placement, the angle of the flare, the choice of location. Something about it felt familiar, not the trap itself, but the mindset behind it. The positioning was too perfect, too calibrated to their specific movement patterns. Cut it or bypass? Hollister asked. Neither. Maya pulled out a small thermal decoy from her pack, a chemical heat source designed to simulate human body temperature. We're going to trigger it, but not here. She attached the decoy to a length of paracord, then carefully rigged it to pull the tripwire from 50 meters away. They moved past the trap, took cover positions, and then activated the decoy. The flare burst to life, shooting a brilliant red signal into the sky. Within seconds, they heard the sound of vehicles converging on the position engines, roaring orders being shouted in multiple languages. Enemy forces rushed toward the flare, expecting to find trapped Americans. Instead, they found empty rock and a chemical heat source slowly cooling in the morning air. Misdirection, Maya explained as they continued moving. Now they think we're predictable. They'll concentrate forces on flare positions while we move through the gaps. The ravine began to widen, opening into a broader canyon system. But with the expansion came new problems. The canyon floor was exposed, offering little cover, and creating what amateurs called a fatal funnel, a terrain feature that channeled movement into a kill zone. Rourke's voice came through their earpieces. "Echo 3, we have a problem. Satellite imagery shows a blocking force at the canyon exit. Minimum 20 fighters with technical vehicles." Maya found an elevated position and set up her rifle using the scope to survey the situation. Through the heat shimmer, she could see the enemy position clearly. 2 pickup trucks with mounted heavy machine guns supported by dismounted infantry in good cover. They commanded the only exit from the canyon. "I count 23, she reported. "But look at their positioning. They're all focused on the obvious approach route. They don't know about the ledge system on the eastern wall." Hollister studied the cliff face she indicated. "That's a 70-foot vertical climb on crumbling shale. One slip and we're done." "Or," Maya countered, "it's a covered approach that puts us above their position with perfect fields of fire." It was another impossible choice attempt, a dangerous climb in full combat gear or try to fight through a reinforced position across open ground. But Maya had made a career out of turning impossible choices into tactical advantages. "I'll take Overwatch," she decided. "Give me 15 minutes to get position. Then you move along the base of the eastern wall. I'll suppress the blocking force and create confusion in that chaos you climb." Rourke considered the plan. It required precise timing, perfect shooting, and a level of trust between team members that usually took years to develop. But Maya had earned that trust with 3 impossible shots through closing windows. "Do it," he ordered. Maya moved like a ghost, finding hand and footholds in rock faces that looked smooth from a distance. Her rifle secured across her back added 20 pounds of off-balance weight that should have made the climb impossible. But she'd learned long ago that impossible was just another word for untested. The ledge she'd identified was barely 18 inches wide, but it offered perfect elevation and concealment. She set up her rifle building a stable shooting position from nothing but rock and physics. Through her scope, she could see every enemy fighter, their positions, their weapons, their fields of fire. More importantly, she could see their blind spots. "Ghostline in position," she whispered into her mic. "On your mark." The team began their movement, staying low against the eastern wall. For 30 seconds, they went undetected. Then an enemy sentry turned at the wrong moment, catching movement in his peripheral vision. The shout of alarm echoed off canyon walls. Enemy fighters scrambled to engage their weapons, swinging toward the team's position. In that moment of chaos, Maya went to work. Her first shot took out the gunner on the nearest technical, the man crumpling before the sound of the shot even reached enemy positions. She worked the bolt with mechanical precision, acquiring her second target before the first had finished falling. The driver of the same vehicle, reaching for the mounted gun, spun and dropped as Maya's second shot found its mark. But she wasn't trying to eliminate all threats that was impossible even for her. Instead, she was creating psychological chaos, making the enemy feel surrounded and under attack from multiple positions. She varied her shooting positions along the ledge, using the canyon's acoustics to make it sound like multiple snipers were engaged. An enemy fighter spotted her muzzle flash and opened fire, his round sparking off rocks inches from her position. Maya didn't flinch. She calculated the shooter's pattern, 3 round bursts with a predictable pause between them. In that pause, she placed a single shot that removed him from the equation. "Eastern wall, 30 feet up," an enemy commander shouted in accented English. They'd spotted the team's climb. Several fighters turned their weapons upward, ready to cut the Americans down as they clung to the cliff face. Maya shifted targets, prioritizing threats to the climbing team. Her rifle spoke in measured intervals, each shot precisely calculated to protect her teammates' ascent. A shooter lining up on Hollister fell before he could squeeze the trigger. Another, moving to a better angle on Rourke, stumbled backward with Maya's shot through his shoulder. But ammunition was finite, and Maya counted every round like a miser counting coins. 18 shots fired. 12 rounds remaining. Too many enemies, too little ammo, and the team was only halfway up the cliff. That's when she spotted him, a young fighter, maybe 17, crouched behind a boulder with a radio in his hand. He was calling for reinforcements, directing the QRF to their position. In 30 seconds, maybe less, this canyon would be flooded with enemy forces. Maya lined up the shot. Center mass. An easy kill that would buy them precious time. But the boy's hands were shaking. Through her scope, she could see the fear in his posture, the way he held the radio like a lifeline rather than a weapon. He was a spotter, not a shooter. A kid caught up in someone else's war. She adjusted her aim and fired. The radio exploded in the boy's hands, plastic and circuits scattering across the rocks. He fell backward unhurt, but terrified, scrambling away from his position and running back toward the compound. "Why didn't you take the shot?" Hollister's voice crackled through her earpiece. They'd reached the top of the cliff, safe for the moment. "Because I didn't need to," Maya replied, already breaking down her rifle for movement. "Dead men create martyrs. Scared boys create doubt." They regrouped on the plateau above the canyon, the enemy blocking force now below and behind them. But their relief was short-lived. Rourke was examining something he'd found near their rally point, a dead courier wearing Allied recognition patches, his secure communications brick missing. "This is Lieutenant Patterson," Rourke said grimly. "He was carrying our operational codes. If the enemy has his crypto brick, they can listen to everything," Maya finished. "Every transmission, every update, every order." The implications were staggering. Not only did they have a traitor feeding information to the enemy, but now the enemy potentially had access to their entire communication network. They were operating blind and deaf, while the enemy could see and hear everything. Admiral Sloan's voice cut through their contemplation. "All units be advised. State Department is establishing a red line. No kinetic operations within the border village. Repeat weapons hold if you reach the village. Diplomatic solution in progress." Maya and Hollister exchanged glances. The border village was their only path to extraction, now a collection of mud brick buildings that straddled the international boundary, making it politically sensitive terrain. Firing a weapon there could spark an international incident. "That's where they'll hit us," Maya said with certainty. "They know we can't shoot back in the village. It's the perfect ambush site." As if to confirm her prediction, they heard the distinctive sound of helicopters approaching. But something was wrong with the sound. The rotor beat was slightly off the engine noise, not quite matching the Blackhawks they were expecting. Through her scope, Maya tracked the approaching aircraft. The silhouette was right. The markings appeared correct, but small details were wrong. The antenna configuration was different. The door gun mount was a different model. These weren't their helicopters. "It's a trap," she announced. "Those birds are fakes. Similar enough to pass casual inspection, but definitely not ours." Rourke studied the approaching helicopters through his binoculars. "How can you be sure? The rotor blade angle," Maya explained. "Real Blackhawks have a negative blade angle of 2 degrees in forward flight. These are running neutral. Someone did their homework, but not quite enough." The fake helicopters began their approach pattern following the exact flight path their real extraction birds would use. Whoever was controlling this operation had inside knowledge of their procedures, their recognition codes, even their flight patterns. "Overwatch Echo 3, Rourke called. "Verify extraction aircraft on approach." Static. Then Admiral Sloan's confused voice. "Echo 3, no aircraft authorized at this time. Extraction is still 90 minutes out." The fake helicopters continued their approach, now close enough that Maya could see figures in flight suits through the cockpit glass. The deception was nearly perfect, good enough to fool desperate soldiers looking for rescue. "They're going to land in the village," Hollister observed, "right in the middle of the no-fire zone." Maya was already moving her mind, calculating angles and distances. "Not if I can help it." She found a position overlooking the village landing zone, setting up her rifle for what would be her most challenging shots yet. The helicopters were moving targets armored against small arms fire, and she had to disable them without causing casualties that would violate the red line. "You can't shoot down helicopters with a rifle," Hollister said. "I'm not shooting them down," Maya corrected. "I'm making them go away." She studied the lead helicopter's approach, identifying critical but non-lethal components. The tail rotor control cables exposed for a fraction of a second during a specific point in the landing pattern. The hydraulic lines for the landing gear. The external fuel gauge that pilots relied on for safe landing calculations. Her first shot sparked off the lead helicopter's tail boom, severing a control cable. The aircraft immediately began to yaw the pilot fighting to maintain control. Not catastrophic damage, but enough to make landing dangerous. The second shot punched through the external fuel gauge, causing it to read empty. Warning lights would be flashing in the cockpit, alarms sounding. The pilot would have seconds to decide continue landing with potentially no fuel or abort. The helicopters wavered, caught between their mission and their survival instincts. Maya placed a third shot through the door gun mount of the second aircraft, the ricochet creating a spectacular but harmless shower of sparks inside the cabin. Both helicopters aborted their landing, pulling up and banking away from the village. They'd return to whoever sent them with a story of taking fire, of mechanical failures, of a mission that couldn't be completed. "Outstanding shooting," Rourke said. "But they'll try again. And now we're down to how many rounds?" "7, Maya replied, checking her ammunition. "7 rounds between us and whatever comes next." They moved toward the village, knowing it was a trap, but having no other option. The sun was high now, the heat oppressive, and somewhere in the command structure, a traitor was watching their every move, anticipating their every decision. As they reached the village outskirts, Maya noticed something that made her blood run cold. On a rooftop, barely visible through the heat shimmer, was a figure with a laser rangefinder, not aimed at them, but at the empty sky, where their real extraction helicopter would appear. And the figure holding it wore the distinctive gear of an American Special Operations soldier. The traitor wasn't just feeding information. They were here on the ground, actively participating in the ambush. "Contact," Maya whispered. "Rooftop 2 o'clock. That's one of ours." Through her scope, she studied the figure's movements, their equipment, their posture. Something familiar in the way they moved, the way they held themselves. And then the figure turned just for a moment, and Maya's world tilted on its axis. She knew that face. The sharp features, the calculating eyes, the slight scar across the left eyebrow from a training accident 3 years ago. Lieutenant Ava Kerr, their former communications chief, reported killed in action 6 months ago in a helicopter crash that left no recoverable remains. "It's Kerr," Maya breathed. "Ava Kerr is alive. And she's the traitor." The pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. Kerr had access to everything: communication protocols, operational planning, team dynamics. She'd supposedly died just as new encryption systems were being implemented, systems she'd helped design. The perfect ghost in the machine, trusted because she was dead, invisible, because no one looks for corpses. "Impossible," Rourke said. "I wrote her eulogy. I presented the flag to her parents." "Then someone's parents got a flag they didn't deserve," Maya replied coldly. That's definitely her, and she's painting our extraction bird for a surface-to-air missile. The situation had escalated beyond a simple ambush. This was an execution orchestrated by someone who knew exactly how they operated, who could predict their moves because she'd helped write their playbook. "I have the shot," Maya said, her crosshairs settling on Kerr's head. "One-round problem solved." "Negative," Rourke ordered. "We need her alive. She's the key to unraveling this entire network." On the rooftop, Kerr continued her preparations, unaware she'd been spotted. She moved with the confidence of someone who believed her death made her invisible, her betrayal unthinkable. Maya watched through her scope as Kerr pulled out a radio not military issue, but something custom probably tied to the enemy QRF. She was coordinating the ambush in real time, adjusting based on their movements. "She's vectoring enemy forces," Maya reported. 40 seconds until they're in position. The village streets began filling with civilians, women carrying water children playing elderly men sitting in doorways. Human shields, whether intentional or coincidental. Any firefight here would have catastrophic collateral damage. "We need to move," Hollister urged. "Get out of the kill zone." But Maya was thinking 3 moves ahead. "No, we need to control the narrative. Make her reveal herself." She pulled out her emergency flare, the one every operator carried for last resort signaling. But instead of firing it skyward, she calculated angles, trajectories, and wind drift. Then she fired it at a specific building, an abandoned fuel depot on the village's eastern edge. The flare struck a rusted fuel barrel, igniting residual vapors in a spectacular but controlled explosion. A wall of fire erupted between the village square and the approaching enemy forces, creating a barrier of heat and smoke that would last maybe 3 minutes. In the chaos, civilians scattered, running away from the flames, but also away from the kill zone. The enemy advance halted their perfect ambush, disrupted by unexpected fire. And on the rooftop, Ava Kerr stood up, trying to reacquire her targets through the smoke and confusion. In that moment of exposure, Maya saw what she'd been looking for, the 4th window. Not a physical window, but a moral one. The brief moment when doing the right thing and doing the necessary thing diverged, creating a gap where choices lived and died. "Kerr's trying to reposition," Maya reported. "She's moving to—" A shot rang out. Not from Maya's rifle, but from another position. Hollister grunted and spun his shoulder blooming red as he fell against a wall. "Sniper!" he gasped. "Didn't see. How did they—" Maya found the shooter instantly, another figure, on another rooftop, using the same calculations she would use, the same angles, the same understanding of ballistics and wind. She trained them, Maya realized. Kerr taught them our shooting solutions. It was the ultimate betrayal. Not just selling information, but actively training enemy forces to think like American special operators, to shoot like them, to predict like them. Maya dragged Hollister into cover quickly, assessing his wound. Through and through missed the arterial bundle, but he was losing blood and combat ineffective. "I'm good," he lied through gritted teeth. "Take the shot. Stop her." 5 rounds remaining. 2 confirmed enemy snipers plus Kerr. Enemy QRF closing in. Real extraction still 70 minutes out. The math was impossible. But Maya had made impossible math possible before. She pulled out her last strip of mylar, let it dance in the wind for exactly 2 seconds, then made her choice. Not the expected choice engaging the enemy snipers, but something else entirely. She shot the village bell tower. The ancient bronze bell rang out with a deep, resonant tone that echoed across the valley. Once, twice, 3 times, as her bullets struck specific points, creating a pattern that every operator would recognize the emergency rally signal, the call that meant all units converge immediately. "What are you doing?" Rourke demanded. "Creating doubt," Maya replied. "Kerr thinks she knows our playbook, but she's been gone 6 months. She doesn't know our new protocols." The bell continued to ring, its echoes creating acoustic shadows that revealed positions. The enemy sniper, confused by the unexpected signal, shifted position to get a better view. In that movement, Maya found her shot. 4 rounds remaining. The enemy sniper fell, his rifle clattering across the rooftop. But Kerr was already adapting, speaking rapidly into her radio, adjusting the ambush to account for this new variable. "She's calling in the QRF," Maya observed. 60 seconds until we're overrun." Admiral Sloane's voice cut through the chaos. "Echo 3, be advised. News media has picked up the firefight, streaming live footage globally. The whole world is watching." Maya understood immediately. The diplomatic red line had just become a public relations nightmare. Every shot fired, every casualty inflicted would be broadcast globally. But that knife cut both ways. "Commander," Maya said, "give me your smoke grenades. All of them." She arranged the smoke grenades in a specific pattern, not for concealment, but for communication. As they deployed, the colored smoke rose in columns that spelled out a message visible to the news drones overhead: SOS. Within seconds, the global narrative shifted. This wasn't an American military operation gone wrong. This was Americans under attack, requesting rescue, defending themselves in a village while trying to protect civilians. On her rooftop, Kerr realized the trap she'd walked into. She couldn't order an attack on clearly identified Americans requesting help without revealing her own position as the aggressor. But she also couldn't let them escape. "Fourth window," Maya muttered, understanding Kerr's earlier radio transmission. She wasn't talking about a physical location. She was talking about the moment when operational success and strategic visibility collide. Through the smoke, Maya saw Kerr make her decision. The former communications chief raised her own rifle, taking aim at the wounded Hollister. A kill shot to escalate the situation, to force the Americans to respond with violence that would play badly on global media. Maya had 3 rounds left. 1 for Kerr, maybe 1 for escape. Not enough for both. She made her choice. The shot was perfect, not a kill shot, but a disabling one. The tungsten round punched through the brick wall Kerr was using as support, through her shooting arm, pinning her to the structure. Alive, but neutralized, unable to fight or flee. 2 rounds remaining. The QRF vehicles roared into the village, but they hesitated. The global media coverage had changed the calculus. They couldn't simply massacre Americans on live television, but they also couldn't let them leave. In that moment of hesitation, the real extraction helicopters appeared on the horizon. Black Hawks with the correct rotor angle, the right antenna configuration, the proper door gun mounts. But Kerr, even pinned and wounded, had one last card to play. With her free hand, she pulled out a dead man's switch, release it, and hidden explosives would level half the village. "Everyone dies," she called out, her voice carrying across the square. "Or everyone lives. Your choice, Ghostline." Maya could see the scenario playing out. Shoot Kerr, the switch releases, civilians die. Let her go, she disappears again. The betrayal continues. Try to negotiate, run out the clock until the device arms anyway. The 4th window. The impossible choice. But Maya had spent her entire career making impossible choices possible. She studied the scene through her scope. Kerr's position, the switch mechanism, the wind patterns, the angle of the sun creating specific shadows. 1 round remaining. "Hollister," she said quietly. You still trust me?" "After today," he replied through the pain. "Absolutely." "Then when I say run, you run, no matter what you see, what you hear. You run for those helicopters." She adjusted her position one final time, finding that perfect balance between breath and heartbeat, between physics and intent. Through her scope, she could see everything Kerr's finger on the switch. The determination in her eyes, the slight tremor in her wounded arm that created a predictable pattern. Maya didn't shoot Kerr. She shot the dead man's switch itself. The round struck at precisely the angle needed to jam the mechanism without triggering it. The switch froze, neither armed nor safe, trapped in mechanical limbo. Kerr tried to release it, to trigger it, to do anything, but the device was locked in a state of quantum indecision. "Run!" Maya shouted. The team moved Rourke, supporting the wounded Hollister, racing for the extraction helicopters. Enemy forces hesitated, unsure whether to fire on internationally visible Americans or try to stop them without violence. Maya held her position, keeping her empty rifle trained on Kerr. The former operative couldn't know the weapon was empty, couldn't risk that Maya wouldn't take a kill shot if she moved. It was a standoff built on deception and physics. Two snipers separated by distance and betrayal, each holding the other in check. The helicopters touched down, and Maya heard Rourke's voice in her earpiece. "We're loaded. Ghostline displace now." But Maya waited 3 more seconds, maintaining the illusion of the threat, keeping Kerr pinned until the helicopters were airborne. Only then did she move, sprinting across rooftops as enemy forces finally decided to engage. Bullets sparked off stone and metal around her as she ran. No rifle now, no ammunition, just speed and angles and the kind of audacious courage that made impossible escapes possible. The helicopter couldn't land enemy fire, was too intense. But it could hover. 15 feet off the ground, the crew chief extending a fast rope. Maya didn't hesitate. She leaped from the rooftop, catching the rope mid-air, her momentum swinging her out over empty space before the crew chief and Hollister hauled her into the cabin. As the helicopter climbed away, she looked back to see Kerr being surrounded by enemy forces still pinned to the wall, the jammed dead man's switch in her frozen hand. Alive, but captured, her betrayal exposed on global media, her network compromised. "The shot you didn't take," Hollister said, understanding flooding his features. "You could have killed her. Clean shot, justified, problem solved." "Death would have made her a mystery," Maya replied. "Now she's evidence. Every operation she compromised, every secret she sold, every life she cost, it all comes to light." Admiral Sloane's voice filled the cabin. "Outstanding work, Echo 3. Intelligence assets are already rolling up her network. Preliminary count shows 10 cells exposed, 57 operatives identified." But Maya wasn't listening to the congratulations. She was watching the physics of the rotor blades, the way they cut through air at specific angles, creating lift through applied mathematics. It was beautiful in its complexity, elegant in its solution. "Hey," Hollister said, his good hand finding her shoulder. "That thing with the bell tower using acoustics to reveal positions, where'd you learn that?" "I didn't learn it," Maya replied. "I observed it. The world shows us everything we need to know. We just have to pay attention to the details others miss." As the helicopter carried them home, she pulled out her notebook and began calculating wind speeds at altitude air pressure differentials, the mathematical poetry of flight. Because in the end, everything came down to physics. Bullets and betrayal, loyalty and ballistics, impossible shots and improbable escapes. The numbers never lied. They just waited for someone to read them correctly. And Maya Trần, callsign Ghostline, had built her entire life on reading the numbers everyone else missed. The helicopter's medical kit scattered across the cabin floor as they hit turbulence, and Maya caught a suture pack mid-air while maintaining pressure on Hollister's wound. The medic was working fast, but his hands shook slightly, not from the aircraft's movement, but from what he'd just witnessed. "Never seen anything like that," the medic muttered, inserting an IV line. "Three generals 2,300 meters through closing windows. They're already calling it the Trinity shot on the net." Maya didn't respond. She was studying Hollister's exit wound, calculating blood loss against time to the field hospital. The mathematics of survival were just as precise as the mathematics of killing. "Ghostline." Admiral Sloane's voice crackled through the helicopter's comm system. "We need you to review something immediately. Kerr's being transported to a black site, but she said something before they sedated her. Something about a fourth window." Through the static, they could hear a recording of Kerr's voice, slurred from pain medication, but still carrying that familiar analytical tone. "Maya only saw 3 windows. The fourth one opens in 6 hours. Tell her she should have taken the kill shot." Rourke leaned forward, his expression grave. "What's the fourth window?" Maya's mind raced through possibilities. 3 generals eliminated. Kerr exposed and captured. The network compromised. What had they missed? What angle hadn't she calculated? The helicopter banked sharply, and through the window, Maya saw something that made her blood freeze. Another Black Hawk flying parallel to them, matching their speed and altitude perfectly. Too perfectly. "That's our escort," the pilot announced. "Callsign Phantom 2, they'll accompany us too." Maya grabbed the crew chief's shoulder. "That's not our escort. Look at the rotor wash pattern." The crew chief squinted at the adjacent helicopter, then his eyes widened. The downwash from the rotors was creating a specific pattern in the dust cloud below. Not the standard turbulence of a Black Hawk, but something subtly different. "Modified blades," Maya said. "Quieter signature, but different aerodynamics. Someone's been upgrading enemy equipment with our technology." Before anyone could respond, the escort helicopter's side door slid open. Instead of door gunners, Maya saw something far worse, a mounted anti-aircraft missile system, the kind designed to look like standard helicopter armament from a distance, but capable of much more. "Brake right!" she shouted, but the pilot was already responding, throwing the Black Hawk into a violent, evasive maneuver. The missile launched its smoke trail, cutting through the air where they'd been seconds before. The explosion behind them was deafening, close enough that shrapnel peppered their fuselage like hail. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit as the pilot fought to maintain control. "Hydraulics damaged," he reported with professional calm. "We're losing fluid. I can give you maybe 10 minutes of controlled flight." Through the chaos, Maya noticed Hollister trying to sit up despite his injury. He was pointing at something on the deck, Kerr's confiscated equipment that they'd recovered from the village. Among the standard gear was something that shouldn't exist. A prototype communications device Maya recognized from a classified project that had supposedly been terminated. "That's Project Whisper," Hollister gasped. "Quantum encrypted burst transmission. Unhackable, untrackable. How does she have it?" Maya understood immediately. Kerr hadn't just stolen secrets. She'd stolen technology that wasn't even officially deployed yet. The fourth window wasn't about the current operation. It was about something bigger, something that would happen in 6 hours, regardless of Kerr's capture. She pre-programmed a transmission, Maya realized. 6 hours from the original operation start time. Even captured, even dead, her message will send. Rourke grabbed the device, examining it with growing alarm. "Can we stop it?" "Not without the quantum key," Maya replied. "And that's probably..." Another missile streaked past closer this time. The fake escort was lining up for a killing shot, and their damaged helicopter couldn't evade much longer. They were losing altitude auto-rotation, barely keeping them stable. Maya made a calculation that should have been impossible. wind speed, rotor failure rate, trajectory decay, and the precise amount of lift remaining in their damaged systems. She grabbed the crew chief's rifle, a standard M4, not her precision weapon, but it would have to do. "Open the door," she ordered. "Are you insane? We're in a spinning descent." "Controlled spinning descent," Maya corrected. "The rotation gives me a predictable firing platform if I time it right." The door slid open, and hurricane-force wind filled the cabin. Maya braced herself against the frame, the rifle feeling toy-like compared to her usual weapon. Through the chaos of their spin, she could see the enemy helicopter lining up another shot. The pilot was good, maintaining perfect position despite their erratic movement. But Maya wasn't aiming at the helicopter. She was aiming at the missile system itself, specifically the laser guidance module that would activate milliseconds before launch. It was a target the size of a tennis ball, visible for perhaps half a second during each rotation through turbulent air at a range that pushed the M4 to its absolute limits. She fired in bursts, timing each trigger pull to their rotation rate. The first burst missed, sparking off the helicopter's armored hull. The second was closer, shattering a window. But the third burst found its mark. The guidance module exploded in a shower of sparks and smoke. The missile launched, but immediately went wild, corkscrewing through the air before self-destructing harmlessly above them. "Ground coming up fast," the pilot announced. "Brace for hard landing." They hit with bone-jarring force, the helicopter's landing gear collapsing the fuselage, sliding across rocky terrain in a shower of sparks and torn metal. Maya protected Hollister's injured shoulder as they tumbled her body, taking impacts meant for him. When the world stopped spinning, they were alive, but down, smoke filling the cabin, electrical systems sparking dangerously. Through the cracked windscreen, Maya could see the enemy helicopter circling back for another pass. "Everyone out," Rourke commanded. "Find cover." They dragged themselves from the wreckage Hollister supported between Maya and the medic, making for a cluster of rocks that offered minimal protection. The enemy helicopter descended, fighters fast roping down to finish what the missiles had started. Maya counted 12 enemies, well-equipped and moving with trained precision. Their own team had 7 effectives, limited ammunition, and 1 critical injury. The mathematics were dire. But then she noticed something about the terrain. They'd crashed at the edge of a canyon system. She recognized the same type of geological formation she'd studied earlier. Erosion patterns that created acoustic anomalies where sound could be bent and redirected in predictable ways. "Give me your grenades," she told Rourke. "All of them. We need those for trust me." She arranged the grenades in a specific pattern among the rocks, not for maximum damage, but for maximum sound. When they detonated in sequence, the acoustic wave would channel through the canyon's natural formations, creating an echo pattern that would sound like reinforcements arriving from multiple directions. The first grenade exploded, its sound bouncing off canyon walls in calculated reverberations. The second and third followed, each timed to create overlapping echoes that simulated vehicle engines and rotor noise. The enemy fighters stopped advancing suddenly, uncertain about how many Americans they were actually facing. In that moment of hesitation, Maya noticed one fighter using hand signals she recognized, American Special Forces communications protocols, but with a subtle variation. These weren't just random enemies. They'd been trained by someone with inside knowledge. "They know our tactics," she whispered to Rourke. "But they learned from training manuals, not experience. They know what we should do, not what we will do." She grabbed a signal mirror from the survival kit, angling it to catch the sun. But instead of using it for rescue signals, she created a specific pattern of flashes, not Morse code, but something more subtle. The mathematical sequence of prime numbers that every American sniper learned but never used because it was considered too complex for field operations. One of the enemy fighters saw the flashes and instinctively tried to decode them, pulling out a reference card. That moment of distraction was all Maya needed. She'd identified their leader, the one making decisions, the one the others looked to for guidance. Using the crew chief's rifle, she placed a shot that struck the leader's weapon, destroying it without killing him. The psychological impact was immediate. If the Americans could make that shot with a standard rifle after a helicopter crash, what else could they do? The enemy formation wavered their trained discipline, competing with survival instinct. That's when Maya heard it, the distinctive sound of Apache helicopters approaching. Real Apaches with the correct acoustic signature and proper military escort protocol. But something was wrong. The Apaches were approaching from the wrong direction, using an attack vector that would expose them to ground fire. Either they didn't know the enemy positions, or it's a trap, Maya realized. Those aren't Apaches. Listen to the blade pattern. She was right. The sound was almost perfect, but the rhythm was off by a fraction of a beat. Someone was using acoustic equipment to simulate Apache helicopters, trying to draw them into the open. "Stay in cover," Rourke ordered. "Don't move until—" An explosion rocked their position. Not from enemy fire, but from underground. The ground beneath them cracked and shifted, revealing metal underneath the rock they'd crashed on top of some kind of bunker or underground facility. Through the cracks, Maya could see equipment inside, communications gear, weapons, and most importantly, a series of monitors showing satellite feeds and tactical displays. This wasn't just a random crash site. They'd stumbled onto a forward operating base that shouldn't exist. "This is Kerr's real operation," Maya breathed. The generals were a distraction. This facility is the fourth window. On one of the monitors, a countdown timer showed 5 hours and 17 minutes remaining. Below it, target coordinates that made Maya's blood run cold. Every major U.S. military base in the region, complete with guard rotations, security protocols, and vulnerability assessments. She wasn't just selling information, Rourke said, understanding the scope of the betrayal. She was preparing for something bigger. The fake Apache sounds were getting closer, and the enemy fighters were regrouping, preparing for a final assault. They were trapped between a fortified enemy position and a compromised underground facility with wounded team members and limited ammunition. That's when Hollister, despite his injury, pointed to something on the facility's monitors. "Look at that transmission array. It's not military frequency. That's a civilian broadcast system." Maya studied the equipment through the cracks in the ground. Kerr hadn't just stolen military technology, she'd repurposed civilian infrastructure to create a communication network that would be invisible to military surveillance. She's going to broadcast the base vulnerabilities publicly, Maya realized. Not to enemy military, but to everyone. Every terrorist cell, every hostile actor, every lone wolf will have detailed intelligence on our operations. The countdown continued its relentless march. 5 hours, 16 minutes. "We need to get inside," Rourke decided. Disable that system before movement in Maya's peripheral vision made her spin, rifle raised. But it wasn't an enemy fighter. It was the teenage spotter from the village, the one whose radio she'd destroyed instead of killing him. He stood at the edge of their position, hands raised, fear and determination warring in his expression. "You spared me," he said in accented English. "Why? Because killing you wasn't necessary," Maya replied, keeping her weapon steady but not aimed directly at him. The boy reached slowly into his pocket, producing a keycard. "This opens the facility. My uncle made me carry it, said it was important. But you didn't kill me when you could have. That means something." It was either the most fortunate coincidence or another layer of Kerr's trap. Maya studied the boy's face, looking for deception, but found only the confused courage of someone trying to do right in a world of wrong choices. "If this is a trap," Rourke began. "It's not," the boy interrupted. "The woman, the American woman who says she's dead, she lies to everyone. Tells us you're evil, tells you we're evil. But evil doesn't spare children with radios." Maya made a decision that went against every tactical instinct. She lowered her weapon. "What's your name?" "Samir." "Samir, if you help us, you'll be marked as a traitor by your own people." The boy's jaw set with determination beyond his years. "Then I'll be a traitor who prevented a massacre." The enemy fighters were advancing again, emboldened by the approaching fake Apache sounds. Maya counted their ammunition, 47 rounds between the entire team, 3 grenades, and whatever they might find in the facility. "We go in," she decided. "It's our only option." Using the keycard, they accessed a maintenance hatch that led into the bunker. The interior was a testament to Kerr's planning rows of servers' communication equipment and walls covered with intelligence that should have been impossible for one person to gather. But Maya noticed something else. Personal effects. Photographs. A coffee mug with a lipstick stain. Kerr hadn't just been operating here, she'd been living here. For months. Maybe longer. "She faked her death to build this," Hollister said, leaning against a wall for support. "But why?" "What turned her?" On one of the monitors, they found the answer. Financial records showing massive payments from multiple sources, not just enemy governments, but corporations, criminal organizations, even NGOs that profited from regional instability. Kerr hadn't been turned by ideology or coercion. She'd been turned by greed, pure and simple. $27 million, Rourke read from the screen. "That's what American secrets are worth." The countdown showed 5 hours, 2 minutes. Maya found the transmission system's core, a quantum computer that would have cost millions tied into civilian satellite networks through pirated connections. Destroying it would stop the broadcast, but the system had fail-safes. Physical destruction would trigger immediate transmission of whatever data was queued. "We need to reprogram it," Maya said. "Change the target coordinates, alter the intelligence something." "I can try," Hollister offered, pulling himself to a keyboard despite his injury. "But I need time." Through the facility's cameras, they could see enemy fighters surrounding the entrance. The fake Apache sounds had stopped whoever was running that deception had realized they weren't falling for it. "Time's the one thing we don't have," Rourke observed. That's when Maya noticed something in Kerr's personal effects. A notebook similar to her own filled with calculations and observations. But where Maya calculated wind speeds and bullet drops, Kerr had calculated betrayal, the exact pressure points to destroy trust, the precise amount of information to leak for maximum damage, the mathematical formula for treason. And at the bottom of one page, a note: "Maya will find this. She always finds what others miss." It was a message, a taunt, or maybe a warning. Kerr had anticipated even this had known Maya would eventually discover the facility. Which meant, "Get down!" Maya shouted, tackling Hollister away from the keyboard just as it exploded. Not a lethal explosion, but enough to destroy the terminal and trigger a lockdown. Blast doors slammed shut, trapping them inside while the countdown continued. 4 hours, 51 minutes. "She knew," Maya said, studying the notebook. "She knew we'd find this place, knew we'd try to stop the transmission. This is still part of her plan." Through the cameras, she could see more enemies arriving. Not just fighters, but technical specialists with cutting equipment. They'd be through the blast doors in 30 minutes, maybe less. "So we're trapped in here with a doomsday broadcast while enemies cut through the door," Rourke summarized. "Any bright ideas?" Maya was studying Kerr's calculations, trying to understand the mindset behind them. Then she saw it, a pattern in the numbers, a hidden message encoded in the mathematics itself. Coordinates, but not for a target. For a person. "She's coming here," Maya announced. "Kerr escaped. These coordinates are a rendezvous point. She's going to be here to watch her plan succeed." "That's impossible. She was sedated under guard. Check with Overwatch." Rourke activated his emergency beacon, getting a weak signal through the facility's shielding. Admiral Sloane's voice came through heavily distorted. "Prisoner escape. Inside help. Kerr is mobile. Approximate your position." The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. The fourth window wasn't just about the broadcast. It was about Kerr finishing what she'd started, eliminating the only team that could expose the full extent of her network. "She's not coming to watch," Maya corrected herself. "She's coming to clean up loose ends. Us." 4 hours, 38 minutes. The cutting tools outside grew louder, closer. Inside, Hollister had found another terminal, trying desperately to access the quantum computer's core programming. Samir, the boy, who'd helped them, huddled in a corner, overwhelmed by the situation he'd walked into. Maya forced herself to think like Kerr. Not like a sniper, not like a soldier, but like someone who'd calculated betrayal down to decimal points. What would she have planned? What failsafe would she have created? Then she found it. Hidden in the facility's ventilation system, gas canisters connected to the environmental controls. Not lethal gas, but hallucinogens, the kind that would make them see enemies where there were none. Fire on shadows and echoes until their ammunition was exhausted. "Everyone masks on," Maya ordered, finding emergency respirators in a supply cabinet. "She's going to gas us, make us fight ghosts while real enemies wait." They had just secured the masks when the ventilation system activated, flooding the facility with thick, yellow-tinged smoke. Through the cameras, Maya could see the enemy fighters outside also donning protective equipment. They knew what was coming. "I'm in," Hollister announced suddenly. "I've got access to the transmission queue. But Maya, you need to see this." The screen showed the full scope of Kerr's plan. Not just base vulnerabilities, but personal information on every special operations soldier in theater names, families' home addresses. The kind of information that would make them targets for the rest of their lives. "She's not just compromising operations," Hollister said. "She's ending careers, destroying lives, making sure no one who worked with her can ever be safe again." 4 hours, 12 minutes. The blast door glowed cherry red as cutting torches worked through the reinforced steel. They had minutes before breach, and Kerr was still out there approaching, planning to arrive just in time to watch them die. That's when Maya remembered something from Kerr's notebook. A calculation about acoustic resonance in confined spaces. Kerr had been studying the facility's structural harmonics, finding the exact frequency that would cause disorientation even through protective masks. "She's going to use sound as a weapon," Maya warned. "Subsonic frequencies that bypass ear protection create vertigo and nausea." As if triggered by her words, a deep thrumming began to fill the facility. Not heard, but felt a vibration that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Samir doubled over, retching. Hollister gripped the desk to stay upright. Maya fought through the disorientation, forcing herself to think. The frequency was precise, calculated, but calculations could be disrupted. She grabbed Kerr's notebook again, finding the harmonic equations. "The servers," she said. "If we change their cooling fan speeds, we can create a counter-frequency." It was desperate using computer equipment as an acoustic weapon, but Maya had built her career on desperate solutions. She and Rourke began adjusting fan controllers, creating a chaotic symphony of mechanical noise that interfered with Kerr's calculated frequency. The relief was immediate, but temporary. The blast door was failing molten metal, dripping to the floor as the cutting reached its final phase. 3 hours, 49 minutes. I can stop the transmission, Hollister announced. But I need to physically access the quantum core. It's in a sealed chamber flooded with inert gas. Whoever goes in has maybe 90 seconds before losing consciousness. I'll go, Rourke volunteered. No, Maya countered. You're needed for command. Hollister's injured. It has to be me. But even as she spoke, she knew 90 seconds wouldn't be enough. The core would need precise reprogramming, not just destruction. It was another impossible scenario, another calculation that didn't balance. That's when Samir spoke up. I can help. I'm smaller, need less oxygen. We go together, work in sequence. Absolutely not, Rourke said. We don't endanger civilians, especially children. I'm not a child, Samir protested with dignity that transcended his years. I'm someone choosing to stop a massacre. Isn't that what soldiers do? The blast door began to buckle its center, glowing white-hot. Seconds until breach. Maya made the hardest calculation of her life, not about ballistics or wind speeds, but about human potential. Could she trust a teenager she'd met an hour ago with the lives of thousands? We go together, she decided. But you follow my lead exactly. They entered the quantum core chamber as the blast door finally failed, enemy fighters pouring into the facility. Rourke and the remaining team engaged the confined space, erupting in gunfire. The inert gas was already affecting Maya, making her movements sluggish, her vision blur. But Samir was moving with surprising efficiency, his smaller body requiring less oxygen, his young mind processing the technical requirements with unexpected clarity. Here, he said, pointing to a specific circuit board. This controls the targeting algorithm. We change this, the transmission goes nowhere. Maya's fingers were going numb, her lungs burning despite holding her breath. Together they worked on the reprogramming racing against unconsciousness and the countdown that seemed to accelerate with each passing second. 3 hours, 21 minutes. Through the chamber's window, Maya could see the firefight raging. Rourke was down to his sidearm. Hollister, despite his injury, had found a rifle and was picking targets with mechanical precision. But they were outnumbered 5-1 and running out of ammunition. The quantum core's reprogramming was almost complete when Maya heard a familiar voice over the facility's intercom. Ava Kerr, calm and controlled despite everything. Hello, Maya. I see you found my insurance policy, clever as always, but you're trying to solve the wrong problem. Maya's vision was starting to gray at the edges, oxygen deprivation taking its toll. But she forced herself to focus, to think. What had they missed? The transmission isn't going to our enemies, Kerr continued. It's going to our allies. Every NATO database, every intelligence network we share. I'm not destroying our bases, I'm destroying our alliances, making every partner question whether American intelligence can ever be trusted again. The full scope of the betrayal hit Maya like a physical blow. This wasn't about tactical advantage or financial gain. It was about destroying the fundamental trust that international cooperation required. 30 seconds until you lose consciousness, Kerr noted clinically. 20 until young Samir joins you. You can't stop the transmission and save yourselves. Choose. But Maya had spent her entire life refusing false choices. With her last conscious thought, she made a modification to the quantum core's programming, not stopping the transmission, but changing its content. Instead of intelligence vulnerabilities, it would transmit something else entirely. As darkness closed in, she managed to key her radio one final time. Hollister, execute, mirror protocol. Then unconsciousness took her. Maya's first sensation was cold water on her face, shocking her back to consciousness. Through blurred vision, she saw Hollister leaning over her, his injured shoulder wrapped in bloody field dressings, his face etched with concern. The quantum chamber's door was open, fresh air flooding in, and Samir lay beside her, coughing but alive. Mirror protocol activated, Hollister said quickly. You magnificent genius! Instead of classified intel, the transmission sent Kerr's entire financial records to every intelligence agency on the planet. 27 million in blood money, all traceable, all documented. The firefight was still raging outside the chamber. Rourke had overturned a metal desk for cover, brass casings scattered around his position like golden rain. The countdown timer showed 2 hours and 53 minutes, but something had changed. The enemy fighters were pulling back, not pressing their advantage. "They're confused," Rourke called out, "getting conflicting orders on their radios." Maya pushed herself up, her mind still foggy from oxygen deprivation. Through the facility's monitors, she could see why. Intelligence agencies worldwide were already responding to the financial data, freezing accounts, tracking transfers. Every organization that had paid Kerr was suddenly exposed, their operations compromised. "Where's Kerr?" Maya asked, her voice hoarse. "Close," Hollister replied, pointing to a monitor showing the facility's exterior. A single figure approached through the heat shimmer, moving with the confident stride of someone who believed they'd already won. "She's got something with her. Looks like another quantum device." Maya studied the image, her sniper's eye catching details others might miss. The device Kerr carried wasn't just similar to their quantum computer, it was identical. A backup system probably synchronized with the primary. "She can override our reprogramming," Maya realized. "Everything we just did, she can undo with that device." The enemy fighters had stopped falling back. They were waiting, creating a corridor for Kerr to approach. She wanted to face them, to gloat over her victory in person. It was the kind of ego-driven mistake that Maya had seen destroy otherwise brilliant operators. "How much ammunition do we have left?" Maya asked. 17 rounds between us," Rourke reported. 3 magazines for the rifles, my sidearm has 8. Not enough for a fighting retreat." But Maya wasn't thinking about retreat. She was thinking about Kerr's notebook, about the woman who calculated betrayal with mathematical precision. Someone that methodical would have patterns, habits, predictable behaviors hidden in their very precision. "She'll enter through the main corridor," Maya predicted, studying the facility's layout. "It's the most direct route, and she values efficiency over everything else. She'll have exactly 3 bodyguards. She always operates in groups of 4, considers it the optimal tactical unit." "How can you know that?" Samir asked, his young voice carrying genuine curiosity despite their desperate situation. "Because she trained me," Maya admitted. 3 years ago, advanced sniper school. She was the instructor who taught me to see patterns in chaos. Never thought I'd use those lessons against her." Through the monitors, they watched Kerr enter the facility exactly as Maya predicted. 3 bodyguards in diamond formation moving with textbook precision through the smoke-filled corridors. Kerr herself carried the quantum device like a priest carrying a holy relic, careful and reverent. "She's broadcasting," Hollister announced, picking up a transmission on the emergency frequency. "Live feed to someone." Kerr's voice filled the facility's speakers, calm and conversational. "As you can see, the situation is contained. The rogue element will be eliminated, and the operation proceeds as planned. Payment confirmation required before final phase." Someone was watching this funding, this orchestrating from shadows even deeper than Kerr's. Maya filed that information away, another calculation to solve if they survived the next 2 hours. "I'm going to talk to her," Maya decided. "That's suicide," Rourke protested. "She'll kill you the moment you show yourself." "No, she won't. She needs an audience for her victory. It's her weakness. She doesn't just want to win, she wants to be acknowledged as superior. I can use that." Maya stood slowly, hands visible, but not raised in surrender. Raised hands would show submission, and Kerr would respect only strength. She walked into the corridor, placing herself directly in Kerr's path. The bodyguards immediately aimed at her fingers on triggers, but Kerr raised a hand, stopping them. Her face showed genuine pleasure at seeing Maya, like a teacher proud of a student who'd finally learned a difficult lesson. Maya Trần, Kerr said warmly. The ghost who makes impossible shots possible. You found my fourth window after all. I found your fear, Maya replied, keeping her voice steady. That's what this is really about. You're afraid of being forgotten, of being just another intelligence officer who died in a helicopter crash. So you built all this to matter. Kerr's smile flickered for just a moment, a micro-expression that confirmed Maya's assessment. Psychological warfare, I taught you that too, but you're stalling trying to find an angle for that impossible shot you're famous for. I don't have a weapon, Maya said truthfully. No, but Chief Hollister does. 30 meters behind you, partial cover behind the damaged server rack. Commander Rourke is 40 meters to your left, probably down to his last magazine. And that boy unexpected variable, but irrelevant. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. The countdown showed 2 hours and 28 minutes. You missed one variable, Maya said. You always do. You calculate everything except the one thing that can't be quantified. Enlighten me. Kerr's tone carried dangerous amusement. Trust. You betrayed it, so you can't calculate its power anymore. Your bodyguards, they're mercenaries, loyal to payment. My team bleeds for each other. That's a multiplication factor you can't compute. Kerr laughed genuine mirth that echoed off the facility's walls. Beautiful theory, but I have the quantum device. In 30 seconds, I'll override your clever reprogramming and the original transmission will send. Every base, every operation, every secret exposed. She began entering commands into the device, her fingers flying across the interface with practiced efficiency. Maya counted heartbeats, calculating time and distance angle and opportunity. But the math didn't work. No angle, no advantage, no impossible shot to save them. That's when Samir moved. The boy had been forgotten, dismissed as irrelevant by everyone except Maya. He slipped through the shadows with the fluid grace of someone who'd grown up in conflict zones, who'd learned to be invisible to survive. In his hand was something Maya recognized, a fragment of the exploded keyboard from earlier, its edge sharp as a blade. He didn't attack Kerr or her bodyguards. Instead, he went for the quantum device's power cable, sawing through it with desperate determination. Sparks flew as the connection severed the device's screen, flickering and dying. No! Kerr spun her pistol, already moving toward the boy. Maya moved faster than thought, faster than calculation. She grabbed the nearest object, Kerr's own notebook left on a desk, and hurled it with sniper's precision. It struck Kerr's wrist, sending her shot wide, the bullet sparking off concrete instead of finding flesh. The bodyguards reacted instantly, weapons swinging toward Maya, but that moment of distraction was all Hollister needed. 3 shots, 3 targets each round, finding gaps in body armor with surgical precision. The bodyguards fell, their mercenary loyalty worth nothing against a wounded SEAL's determination. Kerr stood alone now, her quantum device dead, her bodyguards down, her perfect plan unraveling. But she still had her pistol, and her eyes held the cold calculation of someone with nothing left to lose. You always were my best student, she said to Maya. Too bad you learned the wrong lessons. She raised her weapon not at Maya, but at the facility's main server. One shot would trigger a cascade failure, potentially releasing the transmission through emergency protocols. Maya didn't have a weapon. She didn't have an angle. She had only the mathematics of motion, the physics of distance and time. She calculated the space between them, 4 meters. The time for Kerr to squeeze the trigger, 0.3 seconds. Her own acceleration from standing start, insufficient. But Samir was closer, and the boy had learned something in the last hours. He'd learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but action despite it. He threw himself at Kerr's legs, a tackle that would have made any football coach proud. Kerr's shot went wide, striking harmless metal instead of critical systems. She fell hard, her head striking the concrete floor with a sound that made Maya wince. The pistol skittered away across the smooth surface. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Kerr laughed, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. "You still don't understand. The transmission was never the real threat. It was just bait to bring you here to this specific place at this specific time." The countdown timer reached 2 hours exactly, and something changed. The facility's lights shifted to emergency red. Blast doors throughout the complex began closing. Not the security lockdown from earlier, something else, something pre-programmed. "The entire facility is a weapon," Kerr continued, pushing herself to a sitting position. "Thermobaric charges built into the foundation. In 2 hours, this entire mountain becomes a crater. And the beauty is it'll look like an American strike. Your presence here, your infiltration, the firefight, all recorded, all documented. The perfect false flag operation." Maya's mind raced through possibilities, but Kerr had planned this too well. Even if they escaped, their presence would be blamed for whatever destruction followed. Thousands of civilians in the valley below would die, and America would bear responsibility. "Unless," Kerr added, "you accept my original offer." "What offer?" Rourke demanded, his weapon trained on her despite its emptiness. "Join me. Not in betrayal, but in truth. The real enemy isn't nations or ideologies, it's the system itself. The endless cycle of violence that keeps defense contractors rich and soldiers dead. Help me expose it all. Bring the entire house of cards down." It was tempting in its twisted logic. Maya could see the appeal, the desire to fight a different kind of war against a different kind of enemy. But she'd learned long ago that destroying systems without building better ones just created chaos that hurt the innocent most. "Counteroffer," Maya said. "You disable the thermobaric charges and we let you live." Kerr's smile was sad now, almost pitying. "You think I have control? The charges are automated, unhackable, triggered by a dead man's switch in orbit. Even I can't stop them now. We all die here together unless—" She pulled out a small device from her pocket, holding it up for them to see. "Extraction beacon. One-time use, quantum encrypted. My employers will extract exactly 4 people from these coordinates in 15 minutes. The quantum signature only recognizes my biometrics plus 3 others of my choosing." "Your employers who just watched you fail," Hollister pointed out. "They watched me succeed in bringing you here. The transmission was bonus. Your deaths, the destruction of this facility, the international incident that was always the real goal. But I'm offering you a way out. Join me live and fight the real enemy, or stay, die, and be remembered as terrorists." The countdown showed 1 hour and 52 minutes. Maya looked at her team, Rourke, steadfast and determined. Hollister wounded but unbroken. Samir young but brave beyond measure. Each of them worth saving, none of them willing to accept salvation at the cost of betrayal. "There's another option," Maya said quietly. "We find a way to redirect the blast." "Impossible," Kerr said. "The charges are dispersed throughout the mountain. You'd need to physically relocate tons of explosives in less than 2 hours." But Maya was already studying the facility's blueprint on a monitor, her mind calculating blast dynamics and structural engineering. Not relocate. Channel. These mountains are limestone porous with natural caves and fissures. If we create the right structural failures, we can direct the blast upward and inward instead of outward. "You're talking about controlled demolition of an entire mountain while we're inside it," Rourke said. "I'm talking about making the impossible possible," Maya replied. "It's what we do." She turned to Hollister. "Can you access the facility's structural sensors?" Despite his injury, Hollister moved to a terminal, his fingers flying across keyboards. "Got it. Seismic sensors, stress monitors, the works. This place was built to withstand bunker busters, so they needed to know if the mountain's integrity was compromised." Maya began her calculations, But this time she wasn't working with wind and bullets. She was working with millions of tons of rock explosive forces that could level city blocks and margins of error measured in milliseconds. "There," she said, pointing to specific locations on the blueprint. "Natural fault lines that run vertical instead of horizontal. If we create fractures at these precise points, the blast will follow the path of least resistance straight up." "How do we create those fractures?" Rourke asked. Maya looked at the remaining explosives on the dead bodyguard's equipment. "With their own grenades. But the timing has to be perfect. Too early and the mountain settles, sealing the channels. Too late and the blast finds other paths." Kerr watched with something approaching admiration. "You're going to try to turn an entire mountain into a shaped charge. That's actually brilliant. Insane, but brilliant." "Will you help?" Maya asked directly. Kerr's laugh was bitter. "Help save the people I was paid to kill. That would be the ultimate betrayal of my betrayal." "No," Maya corrected. "It would be redemption. You were a good instructor once, maybe even a good person. That's still in there under the $27 million of blood money." For a long moment, Kerr was silent. Then she stood slowly, keeping her hands visible. "I know where the primary charge clusters are located, information that was supposed to die with me." The countdown showed 1 hour and 38 minutes. Working together felt strange, the betrayer and the betrayed united by necessity. Kerr guided them through maintenance tunnels to the first charge cluster, enough C4 to crater a football field wired with redundant triggers and fail-safes. "We can't disarm them," Kerr explained, "but we can add directional charges above them, shape the blast like a cannon barrel." They worked with desperate efficiency, Maya calculating angles, while Rourke and Hollister placed charges. Samir proved invaluable, his small size, letting him access tight spaces where devices needed to be positioned. At the third cluster, they encountered a problem. The access tunnel had collapsed, probably during the earlier firefight. The charges were behind 20 feet of fallen rock, inaccessible. 1 hour and 19 minutes. "We go around," Rourke decided. "No time," Maya calculated. "Without that cluster shaped properly, the entire eastern side of the blast will propagate outward. The village." 3,000 people, Samir said quietly. "My cousins live there." Maya studied the collapsed tunnel, her mind racing through options. Then she noticed something, a ventilation shaft barely 18 inches wide that ran above the collapsed section. "I can fit," Samir volunteered immediately. "Absolutely not," Rourke and Maya said simultaneously. But the boy's jaw was set with determination. "You saved me when you could have killed me. Now I save others. This is how redemption works, isn't it?" He was right, and they all knew it. Maya handed him the shaped charges, carefully explaining how to position them. "Magnetic base goes against the ceiling. Green light means armed. Then you come straight back." Samir nodded and disappeared into the shaft. They could hear him moving metal, scraping against metal, occasional grunts of effort. 5 minutes passed. 10. Too long, something was wrong. "Samir," Maya called into the shaft. His voice came back strained but determined. "Charges placed, but there's a problem. The shaft collapsed behind me. I can't come back the same way." Maya's heart sank. The boy was trapped on the wrong side of tons of rock with explosive charges armed and ready to detonate in. She checked the countdown, 53 minutes. "There's another way," Kerr said suddenly. "Service tunnel that connects to that section. It's flooded underwater traverse for about 50 meters, but it's doable." "I can't swim." Samir's voice carried the first note of real fear they'd heard from him. Maya was already moving, but Hollister grabbed her arm. "You can't. Someone needs to finish the calculations, place the remaining charges. You're the only one who understands the math." He was right, but being right didn't make it easier. Maya looked at Hollister's injured shoulder, Rourke's exhausted face, Kerr's calculating expression. "I'll go," Kerr said quietly. "I'm the strongest swimmer here. And let's be honest, if someone has to not make it back, better the traitor than the heroes." It was a moment of unexpected humanity from someone who'd sold out everything for money. Maya saw something in Kerr's eyes, not redemption maybe, but recognition of what she'd lost, what she'd thrown away. "Bring him back," Maya said simply. Kerr nodded and disappeared down the tunnel. They could track her progress through the structural sensors, a heat signature, moving through cold water, steady and determined. She reached Samir's position in 4 minutes, half the time Maya had calculated. "Can you hear me?" Kerr's voice came through the radio, distorted by water and rock. "I'm here," Samir replied. "Listen carefully. You're going to hold on to my shoulders. Keep your face up out of the water as much as possible. When I tap your hand twice, it means take a deep breath. When I tap 3 times, hold it no matter what. Understand?" "I understand." The return journey took longer. The sensors showed 2 heat signatures moving slowly through the flooded tunnel. Twice they stopped, probably for Samir to catch his breath in an air pocket. The countdown reached 38 minutes. Then the signatures stopped moving entirely. "Kerr, report," Maya called. Static. Then Kerr's voice strained, "Partial collapse. We're pinned. My leg's caught. The kid's okay, but the water's rising." Maya's mind raced through options, but the math was cruel. No time to reach them. No way to drain the tunnel. No possible rescue that wouldn't doom the entire operation. "Go," Kerr said, reading the silence correctly. "Finish the job. Save those 3,000 people." "There has to be another way," Rourke insisted. "There is." Samir's young voice came through remarkably calm. "Ms. Kerr, the rock pinning you, is it limestone?" Yes, I think so." "Limestone dissolves in acid. The maintenance kit you're carrying, does it have battery acid for the emergency lights?" There was a pause, then Kerr's surprised voice. "You brilliant little genius. Yes, it does." The next 10 minutes were agonizing. They could hear Kerr working the splash of water, Samir's occasional cough. The countdown reached 25 minutes. Then suddenly both heat signatures were moving again. Fast now, desperation overcoming exhaustion. They burst from the flooded tunnel in a spray of water and gasping breaths, Kerr's leg bleeding but functional, Samir shaking but alive. "No time for reunions," Maya said, though relief flooded through her. "Last 2 charge clusters." They moved as a team, now no longer divided by betrayal and suspicion. Kerr's knowledge of the facility, Maya's calculations, Rourke's leadership, Hollister's determination despite his wound, and Samir's fearless assistance together, they were more than the sum of their parts. The final charge cluster was the most critical, the primary explosive concentration that would trigger all the others. Maya calculated they needed 17 shaped charges positioned with millimeter precision to redirect the blast. 15 minutes remaining. "That's cutting it too close," Hollister observed. "We need 5 minutes minimum to reach safe distance." "Then we have 10 minutes to do 17 minutes of work," Maya replied. "So we work faster." And they did, but it wasn't enough. With 3 charges still to place and only 6 minutes on the countdown, Maya made a decision. "Everyone out, I'll finish." "Not happening," Rourke said flatly. "That's an order, and I'm respectfully refusing it. We all go, or nobody goes." Maya looked around at their faces, determined, loyal, ready to die together rather than live with survivor's guilt. Even Kerr the betrayer stood with them. "Then we do something impossible," Maya said. "We place all 3 charges simultaneously. Rourke, you take position Alpha, Hollister Beta, Kerr Gamma. I'll call the positioning by radio. Samir, you're our runner, spare batteries, tools, whatever anyone needs. They scattered to their positions. Maya stood at the central point where she could see all 3 locations, calling out measurements with the precision of a conductor directing a deadly orchestra. Rourke 2 inches left, Hollister up 3 degrees. Kerr, that's perfect, lock it in 4 minutes. Hollister, your charge is sliding, the magnetic base isn't holding. On it. Through the radio they could hear him wrestling with the heavy device, his injured shoulder screaming in protest. 3 minutes. Got it, Hollister gasped. Locked and armed. Everyone out, Maya commanded. Run. They ran through corridors they'd fought through hours earlier, past the bodies of enemies and the scattered evidence of betrayal. The extraction point was a natural cave 500 meters from the facility entrance, far enough to survive the redirected blast, close enough to reach in time. Maybe 2 minutes. Samir stumbled, his young legs finally failing him. Without hesitation, Rourke scooped him up, carrying the boy despite his own exhaustion. They burst from the facility into harsh daylight, the cave visible ahead, but still so far away. 1 minute. Maya calculated their speed, the distance remaining, the blast propagation rate. The math said they wouldn't make it. The math had never lied to her before. But Kerr had one last surprise. The extraction beacon she'd shown them, she activated it now, not calling for pickup, but sending a burst transmission that Maya recognized. Emergency evacuation protocol. Every military unit in the region would converge on this position. Why? Maya gasped as they ran. Because, Kerr replied between labored breaths, maybe redemption is possible after all. 30 seconds. The cave entrance loomed before them. They dove inside, rolling behind natural rock formations just as the countdown reached 0. The explosion was unlike anything Maya had experienced. The entire mountain seemed to convulse, rock grinding against rock with sounds that belonged in nightmares. The shaped charges worked instead of expanding outward. The blast force traveled upward, following the channels they'd created. The mountain's peak disintegrated millions of tons of rock fountaining into the sky, like the world's largest volcano. The shockwave that reached them was still powerful enough to crack stone and rupture eardrums, but it was survivable. Barely. For long minutes, they lay in the darkness, dust filling the air, the mountain still groaning and settling above them. Then gradually silence returned. Not the silence of death, but of survival against impossible odds. Everyone alive, Rourke's voice was hoarse. Confirmations came from each of them, even Kerr. They'd done it. They'd turned a weapon meant to kill thousands into a relatively contained explosion that harmed no one except those who'd planted it. As they emerged from the cave, military helicopters were already approaching the real ones this time, summoned by Kerr's beacon. Maya could see the village in the distance, intact, its people emerging to stare at the destroyed mountain peak that had nearly been their doom. The fourth window, Maya said, understanding finally hitting her. It was never about the transmission or the explosion. It was about choice, the moment when we had to choose between survival and principle. Kerr nodded slowly. I failed that test, sold my principles for money, and convinced myself it was pragmatism. But you found a fifth option. You always do. The helicopters were landing now, troops deploying to secure the scene. Admiral Sloane's voice crackled through someone's radio, demanding situation reports and confirmations. What happens to you now? Maya asked Kerr directly. Prison if I'm lucky. Execution if I'm not. $27 million of treason doesn't get forgiven because of one act of redemption. But it should count for something, Samir said with the moral clarity of youth. She saved me. That has to matter. Maya looked at the boy who'd shown more courage than trained soldiers, then at Kerr, who'd found her humanity at the last possible moment, then at her team, who'd refused to leave anyone behind. "It does matter," she said. "I'll testify to that." As medical teams treated Hollister's shoulder and checked them all for radiation exposure, Maya found herself standing apart, looking at the destroyed mountain. The math had worked. The impossible had become possible. "But at what cost?" "You're thinking too hard," Rourke said, joining her. "We won. Everyone lived. That's a good day in our business." Is it Kerr was right about one thing: we're fighting symptoms, not causes. How many more Kerrs are out there, people pushed past their breaking point by a system that values secrets over souls? Rourke was quiet for a moment. Then, maybe that's the real fourth window. The choice to keep fighting even when we know the war never really ends. To save who we can when we can and hope it's enough. A medical technician approached them. "Lieutenant Tran, there's a secure call for you, Admiral Sloan." Maya took the radio, expecting congratulations or demands for detailed reports. Instead, Sloan's voice carried a different tone, urgent, concerned. "Ghostline, we have a problem. The financial records you transmitted, they're being blocked from release. Someone very high up is classifying the entire operation, including Kerr's network. They want this buried." Maya felt a cold anger building. After everything, the system was going to protect itself, hide the corruption rather than expose it. "Furthermore," Sloan continued, "they're demanding you and your team sign NDAs, full silence about today's events, or face charges for unauthorized intelligence disclosure." "The transmission was Kerr's, not ours," Maya protested. "Doesn't matter. You were there, you redirected it. In their eyes, you're complicit." Sloan paused. "I'm sorry, Maya. Politics wins again." Maya looked at her team, at Samir, who deserved to be recognized for his bravery at Kerr, who deserved justice even if it meant punishment. The system wanted silence, wanted to pretend none of this had happened. "Admiral," Maya said clearly, "tell them we'll sign nothing. And if they want to charge us, they'll have to explain why American soldiers prevented a terrorist attack that American intelligence failed to detect because they were compromised by one of their own." "That's career suicide, Lieutenant." "No, ma'am. That's integrity. Something the system seems to have forgotten." She handed the radio back and turned to her team. "Any Wasu who wants to walk away from this, I understand. Sign their papers, keep your careers, move on. But I'm going to make sure this story gets told one way or another." One by one, they stood with her. Even Kerr, who had nothing left to lose, nodded her agreement. "The real fifth window," Hollister said, his good arm supporting his injured one, "is the choice to tell the truth, even when everyone wants you to lie." As the sun set over the destroyed mountain, casting long shadows across the Afghan landscape, Maya realized their fight wasn't over. It had just changed. The enemy wasn't across a battlefield anymore. It was in conference rooms and classification stamps in the bureaucracy that would rather hide mistakes than learn from them. But she'd made impossible shots before. She'd calculated wind and distance, and turned physics into poetry. Now she'd have to calculate something harder: how to fight for truth in a world built on necessary lies. The helicopters lifted off, carrying them toward an uncertain future. But as Maya watched the ground fall away below, she felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Because if a teenager could save the day with battery acid and limestone, if a traitor could find redemption in her final hours, if impossible shots could become routine with enough practice, then maybe, just maybe, even systems could change. The math would be harder, the shots more impossible. But Maya had learned something important today. Sometimes the most important battles weren't fought with bullets, but with choices. And sometimes the hardest shot to make was the one you chose not to take. As they flew into the approaching night, Maya pulled out her notebook and began calculating again. Not ballistics this time, but something more complex, the trajectory of truth, through a world of lies, the wind resistance of bureaucracy, the terminal velocity of justice. It would be her hardest shot yet. But then again, she specialized in the impossible. The helicopter's landing skids hadn't even touched the tarmac at Bagram Air Base when Maya saw them waiting, 3 black SUVs with government plates, engines, running doors already opening to reveal men in suits who looked like they'd never held a weapon, but wielded power like ammunition. "Lieutenant Tran, you'll come with us," the lead suit said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that expected immediate compliance. "The rest of your team will be debriefed separately." Maya felt Rourke tense beside her, his hand instinctively moving toward a weapon he no longer carried. They'd been disarmed before boarding the helicopter's standard protocol that now felt like preparation for ambush. "We stay together," Maya said firmly. The suit's expression didn't change, like he was wearing a mask of professional indifference. "That's not how this works, Lieutenant. National security protocols require isolated debriefing to prevent narrative contamination. Maya almost laughed at the bureaucratic euphemism for keeping their stories straight. But before she could respond, Samir spoke up from where he sat between Hollister and Kerr. "I'm not American military," the boy said with surprising authority. "Your protocols don't apply to me, and I have video." Everyone froze. The suit's mask finally cracked, showing a flicker of genuine surprise. "What video?" Samir pulled out a small device from his pocket, a civilian phone, battered but functional. "Everything. The facility, the explosives, Ms. Kerr's confession, the way you saved the village. My cousin taught me to always document evidence of war crimes." Maya hadn't even noticed the boy recording, too focused on survival to catch such details. But Samir had been thinking 3 moves ahead, just like she'd taught him about shooting angles. The suit reached for the phone, but Maya intercepted his hand with sniper's reflexes. "That's evidence in an ongoing military operation. You'll need a warrant." "We'll need nothing," the suit replied coldly. "The Patriot Act gives us authority over American citizens." Kerr interrupted her voice, carrying the exhausted wisdom of someone with nothing left to lose. "The boy's Afghan. Different rules. And if you think you can just disappear him, remember that this entire base just watched us land. Too many witnesses even for you." The standoff stretched taut as piano wire. Maya could see other soldiers watching from nearby hangars, could feel the attention focusing on their small group. The suits had expected to sweep this up quietly, but Samir's video and Kerr's knowledge of legal boundaries had created unexpected complexity. "Sir," another suit whispered urgently to the leader, showing him something on a tablet. The lead suit's expression darkened as he read. "It seems the media has already picked up fragments of the story," he said, his tone suggesting this was somehow Maya's fault. "Satellite footage of the mountain explosion reports of American helicopters in the area. We need to control this narrative before it spirals." Maya saw her opening. "Then you need us cooperative, not coerced. We'll debrief together on record with legal representation present." "You don't get to negotiate?" "Actually, she does." Admiral Sloane's voice cut through the tension as she approached her uniform immaculate, despite the dust swirling across the tarmac. "Lieutenant Tran and her team are still under military jurisdiction until formally released from duty. You want to question them? Follow military protocols." The suit's jaw clenched. "Admiral, you're interfering with a classified intelligence operation." "No, I'm protecting American service members who just prevented a massive terrorist attack. Unless you have arrest warrants, they come with me." The tablet in the second suit's hands buzzed again. More media reports, Maya guessed. The story was already escaping their control, truth leaking through the cracks of classification like water through a dam. 1 hour, the lead suit conceded. You have 1 hour to prepare your people. Then we talk on our terms." As the SUVs pulled away, Admiral Sloan turned to Maya's team. "Conference room 7 is secure. We need to talk." They followed her through the base Hollister, leaning on Rourke for support, his shoulder wound seeping through temporary bandages. Kerr walked with them, but separated like a planet orbiting at the edge of a solar system held by gravity, but no longer part of the inner circle. Conference room 7 was windowless, soundproofed, and equipped with signal jammers that made Maya's teeth ache. Sloan activated additional countermeasures before speaking. "The financial records you transmitted have created a firestorm in intelligence circles," she began. $27 million traced to accounts belonging to 3 senators, 2 intelligence officials, and at least 1 Joint Chief's aide. Maya felt the air leave the room. This wasn't just about Kerr's betrayal anymore. This was about corruption at the highest levels of government. "They're going to bury this," Hollister said, his voice rough with pain and exhaustion. "They're going to try," Sloan corrected. "But you've created a problem for them. Too many copies of the data are already in circulation. 5 allied intelligence agencies have the full transmission. Someone's going to leak it." "So they need a scapegoat," Rourke concluded. "Someone to blame when it goes public." Sloan nodded gravely. "They're already preparing the narrative. Rogue operator, unsanctioned mission, collateral damage that endangered civilians. They'll paint you as cowboys who almost started an international incident." "But we have Samir's video," Maya pointed out, "which they'll claim is edited, fabricated, or taken out of context. You know how this works, Lieutenant. Truth is what the classification stamps say it is." Maya stood and walked to the wall-mounted map of Afghanistan, studying the topography around the destroyed mountain. Something was bothering her, a calculation that didn't balance. "Admiral, how did backup arrive so quickly after Kerr activated her beacon? We were in a remote area, no bases within rapid response range." Sloan hesitated, and in that hesitation, Maya found her answer. "You knew," Maya said quietly. "You knew about the facility. Maybe not the details, but enough. You had assets standing by." The room erupted. Rourke was on his feet despite his exhaustion, Hollister cursing through his pain. Even Kerr looked surprised, and she'd thought herself beyond surprise. Sloan raised a hand for silence. "I suspected. Intelligence chatter suggested something major was planned. When you diverted from your mission parameters, I made a judgment call to position resources nearby." "You used us as bait," Rourke accused. "I used you as what you are, the best special operations team in theater. If anyone could uncover and stop whatever was planned, it was you." Maya processed this new information, recalculating everything that had happened. The 3 generals, were they even real targets? "They were real," Sloan confirmed. "Arms dealers who were getting too independent, threatening established supply chains. Someone wanted them eliminated, but that was just the cover story." "Someone," Kerr said, speaking for the first time since entering the room. "You mean the people who paid me? The ones whose names are in those financial records?" Sloan's silence was confirmation enough. "So we were cleaning house for corrupt officials who then tried to kill us to cover their tracks," Hollister summarized bitterly. "Welcome to the new war," Sloan said, "where the enemies wear our uniforms, and the battles are fought in boardrooms." A knock on the door interrupted them. A young sergeant entered, saluting sharply. "Admiral, the intelligence representatives are demanding immediate access. They're threatening to involve the Secretary of Defense." "Tell them 5 more minutes," Sloan ordered. As the sergeant left, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She pulled out her own phone, not military issue, but a personal device she'd kept hidden. "What are you doing?" Sloan asked sharply. "Changing the game," Maya replied, activating an encrypted application. "I've been recording everything since we landed. Your admission, the suit's threats, all of it." The room went silent. Even Samir looked shocked. "You recorded a classified conversation." Sloane's voice carried dangerous edges. "I recorded evidence of conspiracy to commit murder, cover up corruption, and betray American service members," Maya corrected. "The question is, what do we do with it?" Before anyone could answer, the door burst open. Not the suits this time, but someone far more unexpected, a woman in journalist credentials camera crew behind her already broadcasting. "Sarah Chen, International News Network," she announced. "We're live with the team that prevented today's terrorist attack in Afghanistan." The suits arrived seconds later, their professional composure shattered. "This is a classified facility. How did media get access?" Sarah Chen smiled with predatory satisfaction. "Someone sent us base access codes and a very interesting financial document. We're here to get the real story." Maya realized what had happened. Someone else had been playing this game, someone with access and motivation to expose the corruption. She looked at Admiral Sloane, who seemed genuinely surprised, then at Kerr, who was openly smirking. "Wasn't me," Kerr said. "I've been slightly occupied with redemption and arrest." The lead suit stepped forward, trying to regain control. "This broadcast is a threat to national security. Cease immediately, or what?" Sarah Chen challenged. "You'll arrest us on live television. Please do. Our ratings would go through the roof." Maya saw the trap they were all in now. The intelligence officials couldn't act openly without confirming the story. The media couldn't be silenced without creating a bigger story. And in the middle stood Maya's team holding secrets that could destroy careers or save lives depending on how they were revealed. "Lieutenant Tran," Sarah Chen turned to Maya camera following. "Is it true you made 3 impossible shots through closing windows to eliminate terrorist leaders?" Maya felt everyone watching her, her team, the suit's millions of viewers around the world. This was another impossible shot, but with words instead of bullets. "The only thing impossible," Maya said carefully, "is the situation American service members are put in every day, asked to protect freedom while being betrayed by those who profit from conflict." The lead suit stepped toward her threateningly. "Lieutenant, you're about to cross a line you can't come back from." "I crossed that line when I chose my team over your narrative," Maya replied. Then to the camera, "What happened today was about more than just stopping a terrorist attack. It was about exposing corruption that goes to the heart of our intelligence community." She pulled out Samir's phone, showing the video to the camera. The images were grainy, but clear enough the facility, the explosives, Kerr's confession, the entire operation laid bare. "This brave young man," Maya continued, putting her hand on Samir's shoulder, "risked his life to help us save 3,000 innocent people. While Americans were selling secrets for money, an Afghan teenager was showing us what real courage looks like." The suits were frantically making phone calls now, trying to find someone with authority to shut down the broadcast. But it was too late. The story was out, spreading across networks and social media like wildfire. Sarah Chen turned to Kerr. "You're the intelligence officer who supposedly died 6 months ago. Why did you betray your country?" Kerr stood slowly facing the camera with unexpected dignity. "Because I stopped seeing it as betrayal and started seeing it as business. When you watch senators get rich from defense contracts while soldiers die from equipment failures, the line between patriot and profiteer gets blurry." "She's lying," the lead suit interjected desperately. "This woman is a traitor who was paid by American officials to eliminate witnesses," Kerr interrupted. "I have recordings encrypted but recoverable of every conversation, every payment, every order to kill Americans who knew too much." It was chaos now. The suits were shouting, Admiral Sloane was trying to maintain military order, and Sarah Chen's camera crew was capturing it all. Through the noise, Maya heard something that made her blood freeze, the distinctive click of a hammer being pulled back. One of the suits had drawn a concealed weapon pointing it not at the camera crew, but at Kerr. "National security threat," he said with mechanical precision. "Lethal force authorized." Everything happened in slow motion. Maya's hand moved without conscious thought, grabbing a pencil from the conference table and flinging it with the same precision she used for bullets. It struck the suit's wrist, sending his shot wide, the bullet embedding in the ceiling. Rourke and Hollister reacted instantly, despite their injuries, tackling the armed suit, while others scrambled for cover. Sarah Chen's camera never stopped rolling, broadcasting the attempted assassination live to the world. "Did everyone see that?" Sarah asked her global audience. "An American intelligence official just tried to murder a witness on live television." The lead suit raised his hands, backing away slowly. "This has gotten out of hand. We need to—" "What you need," Admiral Sloan said, her sidearm now drawn and aimed steadily, "is to leave my base before I have you arrested for attempted murder. You don't have the authority. I have a base full of soldiers who just watched you try to kill someone under military protection. Want to test my authority?" The suits retreated, but Maya knew this was far from over. They'd won this battle, but declared war on forces that operated in shadows and specialized in making problems disappear. Sarah Chen approached Maya for a final question. "Lieutenant, what happens now?" Maya looked at her team. Rourke, steady as always. Hollister gritting through pain. Samir young but brave, even Kerr, who'd found conscience too late, but not too finally. Then she looked directly into the camera. "Now we tell the whole truth. About the heroes who fight for America and the parasites who profit from that fight. About young men like Samir who risk everything for strangers and officials who sell out their own people for money." She pulled out her notebook, the one filled with calculations and observations. "I've spent my career calculating impossible shots. Now I'm going to calculate something harder, how to hold power accountable when power writes the rules." The broadcast ended, but the revolution had begun. Within hours, the leaked financial records were trending globally. The Senate announced emergency hearings. 3 intelligence officials resigned, claiming health reasons. But in Conference Room 7, as Sarah Chen's crew packed up their equipment, Maya's team faced a harder truth. "They'll come for us," Rourke said quietly. "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Let them come." Hollister replied, his good hand steady despite everything. "We've faced worse odds." "I can help," Kerr offered. "I know their methods, their assets, their weaknesses. Consider it partial payment on a debt I can never fully repay." Admiral Sloan stood by the door, her expression unreadable. "You've started something that can't be stopped, Lieutenant. I hope you're ready for the consequences." "I've been ready since I took the first shot," Maya replied. "The question is whether the system is ready for the truth." As they prepared to leave, Samir tugged on Maya's sleeve. "Ms. Maya, what happens to me now?" She knelt to his level, seeing in his eyes the same determination that had saved them all. "Now you go home, tell your story, and remember that courage isn't about having power, it's about doing right when everyone else does wrong." "Will I see you again?" Maya smiled, the first genuine smile she'd managed in days. "Count on it. The world needs more people who can see what others miss." They walked out of the conference room together into a base buzzing with activity and speculation. The destroyed mountain was visible in the distance, a monument to secrets and lies, and the terrible cost of both. But as Maya watched the sun set over Afghanistan, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Not the naive hope of youth, but the hardened hope of someone who'd seen the worst and chosen to fight anyway. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. The sender was anonymous, but the content was clear. "You're not alone. Others are ready to tell their stories. The truth is coming. Maya deleted the message, but remembered its promise. The war they'd started today wouldn't be fought with rifles and calculations, but with testimony and evidence. It would be harder than any mission she'd undertaken, more dangerous than any shot she'd attempted. But she'd learned something important in that facility, watching Samir save them all with battery acid and limestone. Sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't force, but truth. And sometimes the bravest thing wasn't pulling the trigger, but choosing not to. As they boarded a transport that would take them to an uncertain future, Maya pulled out her notebook one last time. But instead of writing calculations for wind and distance, she wrote something else. Day 1. The truth is out. The real war begins now. The transport lifted off, carrying them toward whatever came next. Behind them, the lights of Bagram glowed like earthbound stars, and ahead, darkness waited with all its threats and possibilities. But Maya had made impossible shots in darkness before. She'd calculated trajectories through chaos and found targets in confusion. This would be no different, except the target wasn't a person, but a system, and the ammunition wasn't bullets, but words. The mathematics of justice would be complex, the variables numerous, the margin for error non-existent. But Maya had built her entire life on making impossible calculations possible. And this time she wouldn't be calculating alone. She had a team that had proven itself in fire and betrayal, a young boy whose courage had saved thousands, even a traitor who'd remembered her humanity at the last moment. Together, they would take the shot that mattered most, the one aimed at the heart of corruption, fired with truth instead of lead, guided by conscience instead of wind. The transport flew through the night, and Maya closed her notebook. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new calculations, new impossible shots to make or refuse. But tonight, for just this moment, she allowed herself to believe that they'd already won something that couldn't be taken away, the knowledge that even in a world of betrayal and greed, courage could still triumph, truth could still matter, and sometimes, just sometimes, the impossible became inevitable. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Hollister sitting across the transport's cargo bay, texting despite his injured shoulder. Whatever happens next, it was an honor serving with someone who sees what others miss. Maya typed back, "The honor was mine, but we're not done serving. We're just changing the battlefield." She looked around the transport at Rourke, studying intelligence reports at Samir, sleeping with his head on Kerr's shoulder at Hollister, fighting through pain to stay alert. They were more than a team now. They were proof that the system could be challenged, that corruption could be exposed, that impossible shots could find their mark. The transport banked toward its destination, and Maya saw lights below, cities full of people who would wake tomorrow to news that would shake their faith in institutions, but might restore their faith in individuals. It wasn't the victory she'd planned, but it was the one that mattered. As she settled back for the long flight, Maya thought about the fourth window, that moment of choice between survival and principle. They'd found a fifth option, as she always did, but now she understood there was a sixth window coming. The moment when they'd have to choose between safety in silence and danger in truth. She already knew which way they'd choose. They were soldiers after all, trained to run toward danger rather than away from it. The only difference was that this time the danger wore suits instead of uniforms, and the battlefield was courtrooms instead of mountains. But Maya had learned to calculate for any terrain, any condition, any target. And the mathematics of justice, while complex, followed the same fundamental rules as ballistics: apply the right force at the right angle, at the right moment, and even the impossible target could be hit. The transport flew on through the darkness, carrying them toward a future that was uncertain, but no longer hopeless. And in her notebook beneath her first entry, Maya added one more line. The shot that matters most is the one that tells the truth. The safe house in Virginia didn't look like much from the outside, a weathered farmhouse 40 miles from Langley, surrounded by soybean fields that stretched to the horizon. But Maya recognized the subtle signs of serious security, the cameras disguised as bird houses, the pressure sensors hidden beneath gravel that looked naturally scattered, the way every approach angle left visitors exposed for exactly the amount of time needed to acquire and eliminate a target. They'd been here for 3 days since the transport touched down at Andrews Air Force Base. 3 days of debriefings that felt more like interrogations. 3 days of waiting for the other shoe to drop. The media storm continued to rage. Sarah Chen's broadcast had been viewed over 100 million times, and the leaked financial records had already claimed their first victims. 2 senators had resigned, and an intelligence deputy director had been found dead in what the news called an apparent suicide. Maya stood at the kitchen window, watching Samir teach Hollister phrases in Dari, while the wounded SEAL taught him card tricks. The boy should have been returned to Afghanistan by now, but the State Department claimed they needed him for additional testimony. Maya suspected the real reason was leverage. As long as they held Samir, the team would cooperate. "They're moving," Kerr said quietly from behind her. The former traitor had developed an unsettling ability to move silently, even under constant guard. "My contacts in the intelligence community say something big is coming today." "Your contacts?" Rourke asked from the doorway, his tone carrying justified skepticism. "The same ones who paid you to kill us." "Different contacts," Kerr clarified. "The ones who are terrified they'll be next when the investigation expands. Fear makes people talkative." Before anyone could respond, the room's secure phone rang. Admiral Sloan's voice came through the speaker, tense with urgency. "They're coming for you. Senate Intelligence Committee, backed by FBI tactical teams. Arrest warrants for treason." Treason. Maya's mind raced through the implications. For exposing corruption, for unauthorized disclosure of classified information that compromised national security. They're claiming the broadcast gave enemies actionable intelligence about our operations. Through the window, Maya could already see the dust clouds, vehicles approaching fast from multiple directions. They had maybe 3 minutes before the perimeter was sealed. "There's more," Sloan continued. "They have a witness. Someone who says you've been selling secrets to foreign powers for months, that the whole operation was staged to cover your tracks." "That's insane," Hollister protested, but Maya was already thinking ahead, calculating angles and distances. "Who's the witness?" she asked. Sloan's pause told her everything. "Marcus Flynn." The name hit the room like a flashbang. Marcus Flynn, CIA operative, Maya's former partner from 3 operations, someone she'd trusted with her life. Someone who knew enough about her methods to make a convincing lie sound like truth. "He's the real traitor," Kerr said with sudden certainty. "Flynn was my handler. He recruited me, managed my payments, provided the intelligence I sold. If he's turning witness, it's to save himself." The vehicles were visible now, black SUVs in tactical formation, a helicopter approaching from the east. Maya counted exits weapons options. The math was brutal. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and about to be framed for crimes they'd tried to expose. "Admiral, is this line secure?" Maya asked. For another 30 seconds before they cut it. "Then listen carefully. Flynn has a safety deposit box at Commonwealth Bank in Richmond. Box 2447. Inside is a hard drive with his real financial records. He was always paranoid about his handlers kept insurance. Get it before..." The line went dead. Through the window, Maya saw figures in tactical gear deploying from vehicles, setting up a perimeter with military precision. The helicopter was hovering now, sniper positions visible in the open doors. "We could fight," Rourke suggested, though his tone suggested he knew how that would end. "No," Maya decided. "We surrender, but not before we change the game." She turned to Samir, who was watching everything with eyes too old for his years. "Remember when you saved us with battery acid? I need you to do something like that again." The boy nodded immediately. Trust absolute, despite the fear Maya could see in his trembling hands. "Your phone, the one with the video, can you upload it somewhere safe?" "Already did," Samir said proudly. "To 17 different platforms using proxy servers. Ms. Kerr taught me about digital security while you were sleeping." Maya looked at Kerr with surprise and something approaching respect. The former traitor shrugged. "Figured the kid deserved to know how to protect himself in the world we've created." The tactical teams were at the doors now. A loudspeaker crackled to life. "This is the FBI. You're surrounded. Exit with hands visible. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." "One more thing," Maya said quickly. She pulled out her notebook, tearing out specific pages covered with calculations. But hidden among the ballistics equations were other numbers, coordinates, dates, account numbers she'd memorized from Kerr's leaked data. She handed them to Samir. "Hide these. No matter what happens, keep them safe." The boy tucked the pages inside his shirt without question, just as the front door exploded inward. Tactical teams flooded in laser sights, painting red dots across everyone's chest. Maya raised her hand slowly, noting the mixture of FBI and CIA personnel, an unusual combination that confirmed her suspicions about how high this went. "Lieutenant Maya Trần," the team leader announced, "you're under arrest for treason, espionage, and conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism against the United States." As they cuffed her, Maya saw Flynn enter behind the tactical team. He looked older than she remembered, gray creeping into his temples, but his eyes held the same calculating intelligence that had once made him a brilliant operative. Now those eyes held something else, guilt buried under necessity. "Hello, Maya," he said quietly. "I'm sorry it had to be this way." "No, you're not," she replied. "You're just sorry you got caught." Flynn's mask slipped for a moment, showing genuine surprise. "Caught, I'm the one providing testimony against a rogue operation. You're the one going to prison." "Maybe. But you're the one who has to live with knowing you sold out your country for money. At least Kerr had the courage to admit it." Flynn's face flushed with anger, but before he could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "Marcus Flynn, you're under arrest." Everyone turned to see Sarah Chen entering with her camera crew, accompanied by federal marshals carrying a different set of warrants. Flynn's confident expression crumbled into confusion. "What is this?" he demanded. Sarah smiled with predatory satisfaction. "This is journalism, Mr. Flynn. While you were setting up this arrest, we were investigating your financial records. Turns out someone sent us very interesting information about a safety deposit box in Richmond." Maya caught Admiral Sloane's eye through the doorway. The Admiral gave an almost imperceptible nod. She'd gotten the message, retrieved the evidence, and found a way to get it to the media before official channels could bury it. The FBI team leader looked between the two sets of arrests, clearly unsure how to proceed. His operation had been to arrest Maya's team, but now his CIA liaison was being arrested by federal marshals. The careful script had been shredded. "This is still a matter of national security," the team leader decided. "Everyone goes into custody until this is sorted out." They were loaded into separate vehicles, but not before Maya saw something that gave her hope. Among the federal marshals was a face she recognized: David Kim, an investigator who'd built his career exposing corruption regardless of political pressure. If he was involved, someone high up, wanted the truth to come out. The ride to the federal detention center was silent, except for the radio chatter of security protocols. Maya used the time to calculate not ballistics, but legal strategies. Media angles, the physics of truth, through bureaucracy. Flynn was in the vehicle behind them, probably doing the same calculations, probably reaching the same conclusion they were all pieces in someone else's game now. The detention center was a fortress of concrete and procedures designed to hold terrorists and traitors awaiting trial. Maya was processed with mechanical efficiency fingerprints, photographs, personal effects catalogued and sealed. They put her in isolation, a white box with nothing but a steel bench and a camera in the corner. For 12 hours, nothing. No lawyer, no interrogation, no information. Just silence and the weight of accusations. Maya used the time to review everything in her mind, looking for the pattern she'd missed, the calculation that would explain why Flynn had risked exposure to frame them. Then the door opened, and David Kim entered alone. No recording equipment, no other investigators, just a man with tired eyes and a folder thick with documents. "Lieutenant Tran," he said, sitting across from her. "I've been investigating this case for 2 years. You just gave me the break I needed, but it also put you in the crosshairs of people who kill presidents when necessary." "Then why are you here?" Maya asked. "Because sometimes the system works if you know which levers to pull." He opened the folder, revealing financial records that made Maya's blood run cold. Flynn wasn't just selling intelligence. He was part of a consortium that's been orchestrating conflicts for profit. Create a crisis, provide the solution, bill the taxpayers. Your operation interrupted a deal worth $2 billion. The facility we destroyed was going to be blamed on Iranian operatives, would have justified a military escalation that certain defense contractors were already positioned to profit from. Your actions didn't just save 3,000 civilians. You prevented a war. Maya processed this information, understanding finally clicking into place. So Flynn had to discredit us before we could reveal the larger conspiracy. Exactly. But he didn't count on Kerr keeping such detailed records, or on you being smart enough to ensure those records survived. Kim pulled out another document. "Kerr is willing to testify. Full immunity in exchange for complete disclosure. She's already given us enough to arrest 17 more conspirators." "She gets immunity." Maya couldn't hide her disbelief. "She tried to kill us." "She also saved you in the end. And more importantly, she has evidence we need. Sometimes justice means making deals with smaller devils to catch bigger ones." Before Maya could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and she could hear shouting in the corridors. Kim was on his feet instantly. "That's not a drill." The door burst open, and a guard rushed in. "Sir, we have a situation. Armed individuals have breached the perimeter. They're heading for the isolation wing." Maya understood immediately. Someone had decided that trials were too risky, that dead witnesses tell no tales. The conspiracy was cleaning house. "How many?" Kim demanded. "Unknown, but they're professional. Already neutralized 2 checkpoints." Kim made a decision that would have ended most careers. He unlocked Maya's restraints. "Can you get my witness out alive?" Maya flexed her fingers, feeling circulation return. "Depends. Do you trust me?" "I trust that you want to live and see justice done." "Then yes, but I need my team." Kim hesitated for exactly 2 seconds before deciding. "Guard, release the others. Lieutenant Tran is now under federal protective custody." They moved through the facility's corridors as alarms wailed and emergency protocols activated. Maya found her team in adjacent cells, Rourke solid and ready, Hollister favoring his injured shoulder, but mobile Kerr calculating odds with her usual detachment, and Samir somehow looking more determined than frightened. "Extraction plan," Rourke asked, falling into formation without question. "Make one up as we go," Maya admitted. "But first, we need weapons." Kim led them to the facility's armory, using his federal credentials to override the lockdown. Maya selected a rifle, not her custom weapon, but serviceable. The others armed themselves with practiced efficiency, even Samir, who Kim tried to leave behind. "I'm part of this," the boy insisted. "I don't hide while others fight." They could hear gunfire now getting closer. The attackers were methodical clearing rooms, searching for specific targets. Maya calculated their rate of advance, the facility's layout, the probable extraction routes. The math suggested they had 4 minutes before contact. "There's a service tunnel," Kerr said suddenly. "Old infrastructure from when this was a military base. Leads to the motor pool." "How do you know that?" Kim demanded. "Because I've escaped from here before. Training exercise 5 years ago. CIA wanted to test facility security." It was their only option. They moved through the facility's basement, the sounds of combat echoing through ventilation systems. The service tunnel was exactly where Kerr remembered, hidden behind industrial equipment that hadn't been moved in decades. They were halfway through the tunnel when Maya heard footsteps behind them, moving fast and quiet. Professional pursuit, not panicked security. "Contact rear," she announced, turning to cover their escape. The first attacker rounded the corner into her sights. Maya recognized the movement pattern, the tactical positioning, even the weapon customization. These weren't just mercenaries. They were American-trained, possibly active duty, definitely connected to the conspiracy. She fired the shot, precise, despite the unfamiliar weapon. The attacker dropped, but 2 more immediately took his place, laying down suppressive fire that sparked off concrete walls. "Move," Maya ordered, walking backward while maintaining covering fire. Her ammunition was limited, 1 magazine, plus whatever the others could spare. Every shot had to count. They burst from the tunnel into the motor pool, a vast garage filled with official vehicles. Kim was already at a black SUV trying to hotwire it with surprising skill for a federal investigator. "Where did you learn that?" Hollister asked. "Detroit," Kim replied. "Before law school." The engine roared to life just as their pursuers emerged from the tunnel. The firefight was brief, but intense. Maya and Rourke holding them back, while everyone piled into the vehicle. Kim drove with the desperate skill of someone who'd learned pursuit driving from both sides of the law. They crashed through the motor pool's gate into the night, other vehicles immediately giving chase. The detention center was in rural Virginia, surrounded by forests and back roads that could hide escape or trap them, depending on luck and skill. "Where are we going?" Rourke asked, watching their pursuers through the rear window. "Federal courthouse in Richmond," Kim replied. "Judge Hernandez is waiting with emergency warrants and protective custody orders. We get there, we're safe." "They'll never let us reach Richmond," Kerr observed with clinical detachment. She was right. 2 vehicles ahead blocking the road, more behind boxing them in. Maya recognized the tactical formation a standard federal arrest procedure, except the people executing it definitely weren't federal agents. Kim slammed the brakes, skidding to a stop meters from the roadblock. For a moment, nobody moved. Then a figure emerged from the lead vehicle, and Maya's heart sank. Admiral Sloan. But something was wrong. Her uniform was perfect, her bearing military, but her eyes held something Maya had never seen before. Fear. "I'm sorry," Sloan called out. "They have my daughter. If you don't come with them, she dies." The moral mathematics were brutal. Comply and die, resist, and an innocent dies. It was the kind of impossible choice Maya had faced before, but this time the variables included a child's life. "There's another way," Maya said quietly to Kim. but you have to trust me completely." She explained her plan in rapid whispers, the others listening with growing disbelief. It was insane, requiring split-second timing and assuming their enemies would react predictably to an unpredictable situation. "That's impossible," Kim said. "I specialize in impossible," Maya replied. Then louder to Sloane, "We're coming out. No one else needs to die tonight." They exited the vehicle slowly, hands visible but not raised. Maya counted the opposing forces, 12 operators, all professional, all ready. The math said they had 0 chance of survival. But math didn't account for Samir. The boy had kept the pages Maya gave him, but he'd done more than just hide them. He'd studied them, understanding that the numbers weren't just ballistics calculations, but intelligence hidden in plain sight. And he'd sent them to someone, Sarah Chen, who was already en route with her news crew and a satellite truck capable of broadcasting live to the world. The helicopter appeared overhead, suddenly searchlight blazing camera visible in the open door. Sarah's voice boomed through a speaker. "This is International News Network broadcasting live. We're witnessing what appears to be an illegal detention of federal witnesses." The tactical situation changed instantly. The conspirators couldn't kill everyone on live television, but they also couldn't simply retreat. Stalemate. That's when Flynn made his final mistake. He emerged from one of the vehicles, pistol drawn, moving toward Kerr with obvious intent. He'd decided that if he was going down, he'd take the person who'd betrayed him with him. Maya moved without thinking, stepping between Flynn and Kerr. The pistol swung toward her instead, Flynn's finger already squeezing the trigger. The shot was impossibly fast, impossibly precise. Not from Maya, but from Hollister, his injured shoulder screaming as he drew and fired in one motion. Flynn's weapon flew from his hand, his shooting hand now missing 2 fingers. Flynn fell to his knees, screaming, blood pooling on the asphalt. The conspirators wavered, caught between their mission and the reality of live broadcast exposure. "It's over," Maya announced, her voice carrying in the sudden silence. "The whole world is watching. Every move you make is being recorded, transmitted, preserved. You can kill us, but you can't kill the truth anymore." One by one, weapons lowered. The conspirators began melting away, abandoning their vehicles, disappearing into the forest. They were professionals who knew when an operation was blown, when staying meant capture or death. Admiral Sloane stood alone now, tears streaming down her face. "My daughter, we'll find her," Kim promised already on his phone to federal resources. "These people just exposed themselves. We'll track them down." Sarah Chen's helicopter landed, and she emerged with her camera crew already broadcasting the aftermath. Flynn was in custody, bleeding, but alive. Kerr was providing real-time intelligence to Kim's team, and Maya stood in the center of it all, calculating the cost of victory. 3 hours later, Sloane's daughter was recovered unharmed from a warehouse in Baltimore. 17 conspirators were in custody. The Senate had announced emergency hearings that wouldn't be closed sessions, but broadcast live on every network. They sat in a federal safe house, a real one, this time watching the news coverage. The conspiracy was unraveling in real time, each arrest leading to more names, more connections, more corruption exposed. "What happens now?" Samir asked, exhausted but still alert. "Now you go home," Maya said gently. "Back to your family, your life. You've done enough." "But I want to help more," the boy protested. "You have. You showed us that courage doesn't come from training or weapons, but from choosing to act when action matters." She handed him a card with her contact information. "When you're older, if you still want to serve, call me. The world needs people who see what others miss." Kerr stood to leave as well, her immunity deal requiring immediate debriefing at a secure facility. She paused at the door, looking back at Maya. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "For all of it." "I know," Maya replied. That's why you're alive." As Kerr left, Hollister asked the question they were all thinking. "Did we win?" Maya considered the question, calculating the true cost. They'd exposed corruption, prevented a war, saved lives, but the system that created the corruption remained wounded but not dead. "We won this battle," she said finally. "But the war continues. It always does." "So what do we do?" Rourke asked. Maya pulled out her notebook, now water-stained and bullet-scarred, but still functional. She began writing not calculations, but names, every corrupt official exposed, every connection revealed, every thread that still needed pulling. "We do what we've always done," she said. "We take the impossible shots. We save who we can. We tell the truth, even when lies would be easier." She looked at her team, scarred, exhausted, but unbroken. They'd faced betrayal from within and without, survived assassination attempts, and frame-ups exposed corruption that went to the highest levels of government. They'd made impossible shots and impossible choices, and somehow emerged with their integrity intact. The news was showing the destroyed mountain in Afghanistan, now the monument to their mission. But Maya knew the real monument was less visible, the 3,000 people who'd lived because they'd acted the war that hadn't happened, because they'd exposed the truth, the young boy who'd learned that courage mattered more than power. "There's something else," Kim said, entering with a tablet. "The president wants to meet you. All of you. Private ceremony medal of honor for each team member." "Private?" Maya asked. "He knows public recognition would make you targets. This way you get the honor without the exposure." Maya looked at her team, saw the same thought in their eyes. Medals were nice, but they'd never been about recognition. "Tell the president we're honored," Maya said, "but we have one condition." Kim raised an eyebrow. "Samir gets one too. He earned it as much as any of us." Kim smiled, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. "I'll make it happen." As the sun rose over Virginia, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, Maya made one final calculation. Not of distance or wind or trajectory, but of impact. How many lives had they saved? How much corruption had they exposed? How much difference could a small team make against a massive system? The answer, like all her best calculations, was both precise and infinite. They'd saved exactly 3,017 lives, exposed exactly 27 million in bribes, prevented exactly one war. But the ripple effects were incalculable. Every person who'd lived would touch other lives. Every exposed truth would inspire others to speak. Every impossible shot made would prove that impossible was just another word for untested. She closed her notebook and looked at her team one more time. They'd started as soldiers following orders, become heroes through circumstance, and emerged as something more, witnesses to the possibility of justice, proof that individuals could still make a difference, evidence that sometimes against all odds and mathematics good could triumph over greed. "Ready for the next mission?" she asked. They answered as one, always. Because that's what they were now, not just special operators, but special prosecutors of truth, taking impossible shots at corruption wherever they found it. The war would continue, but so would they, one impossible calculation at a time. Maya stood and walked to the window, watching the world wake up to a new day. Somewhere out there in a village in Afghanistan, people were alive because she'd made 3 impossible shots. Somewhere in America, corrupt officials were being arrested because she'd chosen truth over silence. And somewhere a young boy named Samir was probably already calculating his own impossible shots, inspired by the woman who'd shown him that mathematics and courage could change the world. The shot that mattered most, she realized, wasn't the one that had started this journey, or the ones that would come next. It was the one they'd all taken together, the shot at redemption, at justice, at proving that even in a world of betrayal and greed, integrity could still find its mark. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist, revealing a world that looked the same, but had fundamentally changed. And Maya Trần, callsign Ghostline sniper turned truth-teller calculator of impossible shots, smiled. Because the math finally balanced. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. They'd taken their shots, made their choices, told their truths, and in the end, that was all anyone could do, see what others missed, calculate the impossible, and take the shot that mattered. The rest was just physics. And she'd always been good at physics.